2 minutes each for the
So we're an hour and 20. Okay, I thought it was an hour.
Nice sign.
Yeah.
Where'd you get them? Express. They seem bigger than
It was 24 by 24 because they come in big sheets. I could add into get 1 or 2 extra.
Hey, Andy. Good. How you doing, man? Good. Yeah, I always say it's not a camera. No, it's good.
This is where it's at.
I wonder if you watch that.
I do. So I go rolling my window down and yeah, that was good.
He's used to getting down.
Very exciting.
This is fun.
Oh yeah, I suppose the guy that's done this like that.
Yeah, but you know what? I feel like our race is though fun. There's no push pull, there's none of that stuff.
It's also an awful.
True.
It's really a hard
That might have been for us to sit down.
So there's one mic.
Cool.
I figure we'll just pass it down. Each person will have a chance to respond, and then we'll start at the end and come back this way, so that no one ever has to go first each time or last each time. You'll hear. I'm going to explain how it will all work, but to turn the mic on, you just press the bottom. And a little. Oh, it's on right now.
No hot mic incidents.
And you can
yet?
take it out of the holder if you prefer, and just hold it. Just slides right down. So we get started.
I want to know about the penalties for talking too much.
Is there a dong?
There. So you'll get, there's a card that will give you a 20-second warning, and you've got 20 seconds left. And then there'll be a gong when your time's up. And then I've been informed that there'll be a terrible noise if you continue to talk.
Oh gosh.
There's a noisemaker involved. So.
That's the way to get attention.
Exactly. So. All right, guys.
Paying attention.
Do you talk a lot?
I'm very shy.
God, look at
Very
this. This is
shy.
so much. I feel like
Have you guys not met before?
And very succinct. too.
no.
Ed's very shy. Very shy.
I doubt that.
Can everyone hear me? Should I talk loud?
It's a good turnout. Yeah? No, I knew that they were yeah.
So good evening, and welcome to the 2019 Candidate Forum, organized and hosted by JCA in conjunction with Nason's Corner, Libbytown, and University Neighborhood Association, as well as residents of Stroudwater Village and Deering Center. My name is Maureen Morris of Whitney Avenue. All questions for tonight's forum were submitted by Portland residents. We will begin with each candidate giving a 2-minute opening statement, followed by long-form debate questions, for which they'll have 90 seconds to answer each question. A lightning round consisting of yes or no questions that will indicate your answer by holding up either a green or a red card when the question is asked. That was the second round. And then there'll be a brief trivia round with general Portland knowledge. During the long-form questions, a card will be held up at the front to indicate that there are 20 seconds remaining in your 90-second time, as you can see. And when the time has elapsed, there will be a gong sound. And I've been informed by our timekeeper that there will be a terrible noise if speaking continues beyond that time. All candidates are asked not to exceed their allotted time so that all participants will receive equal time to speak. The candidates for District 3 City Council will go first, followed by a brief statement from Highest Ali, and then the candidates for mayor will go. Our most sincere gratitude to all those participating and in attendance, and we hope this will be an informative and spirited conversation. So we'll start with opening remarks. We'll begin with Mr. Volk, and we'll pass the mic down.
Great. Can I take this off?
Yep, and you'll have 2 minutes, and
Zach, when do we start? Can you guys hear me back there? Bias, can you hear me? Yeah, all right. I got it. Awesome. Yeah, all right, awesome. Hi, welcome. My name's Andrew Volk, and it's a privilege and honor to be starting off this evening. Thank you to the organizers here tonight putting this evening together, and thank you to the other candidates on stage, and of course thank you to you all for joining us here at the JCA. Tonight, and this venue in particular, is it's pretty special to me, actually. The last time I was here in this room was a couple months ago, earlier this year. My daughter graduated in the pre-K class from the previous school year's JCA here. Both of my children have come to the J, and it's a real honor to be here, in particular, speaking to you all about the future of our city. Portland is a city that I love, and when I learned that this city council seat was opening up, I took some time to look at the current composition of city council, and I saw something that was really missing to me. As a 35-year-old father of 2 kids who are in public schools and will be in public schools until the year 2035, I truly care about our schools, but I also care about how our city grows and thrives in a sustainable way for all of us to enjoy and prosper in. And as a business owner of 2 small businesses, where I employ over 40 full-time employees, and as someone who is very active and concerned not just about responsible growth, ooh, I like that, thank you. Not just about responsible growth, but also about supporting all of the workers in our city. I want to ensure that our city is and continues to be a place where all can afford to work, to live, and to thrive. Which is what struck me when I first considered running for this seat here in District 3. Out of the 9 city councilors that currently sit on city council, there is only 1 city councilor that has young children in our public schools. And there's not a single city councilor who operates a small business here in the city of Portland. I'm running to represent those missing voices. Thank you all again for being here, listening to us all speak. I look forward to sharing with you my ideas and my thoughts for the city of Portland, and I hope to earn your vote in November.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank Zach and the Libbytown Neighborhood Association, Maya and the Nason's Corner Neighborhood Association, and our tremendous moderators and timekeepers for putting this together. I also want to thank all of you for coming out to learn more about the 5 of us. Speaking of which, I guess democracy is alive and well in District 3, and I want to thank my 4 colleagues for offering themselves up along with me, so you can make a choice who's going to be your District 3 representative. Let's give them all a round of applause. Is Lori Davis here by any chance? I know this isn't about the school board, but I do want to give a shout out to Lori Davis. She's been our tireless District 3 school board member for the past 2 terms. Yeah. And I don't know if either Sam Rosenthal or Adam Burke are here. They're both running for District 3 school board. Sam's here. Sam, thank you for running. I don't know if Adam's here, but again, Adam, yeah, thank you, great. Again, critically important seats, and one of the reasons I'm excited to run for the council is knowing how important it is to have the school board and the city council work in a collaborative fashion to make sure that our schools are the top quality schools that we all want and need, and every kid in Portland deserves. Briefly, since I don't want to run afoul of the timekeeper, there's 3 main reasons why I'm running for city council. One is that process matters. And in all honesty, 15, 18 months ago, we saw, in my opinion, process run amok around the relocation of the homeless shelter. And I sat around kitchen tables, living rooms, backyards with people first in Nason's Corner, then in Libbytown, and then in Riverton. And that was a bad process. So my pledge is to improve the process. We need to close the affordable housing gap, and we need to hardwire sustainability into all public policy-making decisions that we have. That's why I'm asking for your vote on November 5th, and I look forward to getting into more details as we go through.
Hi, my name is Layla, and there's a lot of you in here. That wasn't funny? Okay. In my culture, Layla means midnight moon. My parents have no idea who Eric Clapton is when they named me. And that culture is Afghanistan. That's where my family's from, and that's where we migrated from when we came here as refugees in '89. 30 years ago, when we came here, thanks to Portland's acceptance and this district, I spent my childhood here in District 3. Becoming a citizen when I was 10 years old was probably the most memorable moment and happiest moment for my parents. I'm now 33 years old and own a small business on top of being a publisher of an immigrant magazine called Incomer. Earlier this year, I got engaged to an amazing man and his daughter, and we live in Deering Highlands with our 3 dogs, Artie, Brownie, and Blue. District 3 has been underrepresented for years, and it seems like we can never trust the people we elect to follow through with their promises. Our councilor's interest currently is developing Portland's peninsula, which is depleting the city's budget of funds that should be used to include other districts like District 3. We need support for our unions and schools, our immigrants, our small business owners, and elderly. Why is there never enough money or votes for them? You can count on me to defend the locals of District 3 at City Hall. This means we fund our schools, our libraries, EMTs. We protect our small business owners and property owners from higher tax burdens by using our resources better. No more breaks and waivers for big money developers whose greed and privilege take far more from us than they can possibly generate. I'm not here with an agenda, and I cannot be purchased. I'm a self-made woman, and I'm here because representing the unrepresented is what I do best. Oh, and thank you for being here. God, I forgot that.
Hi, I'm Andy Graham. There's a noise. I'm Andy Graham. I've lived in District 3 for 41 years. I moved to the district in 1978, and I've lived in the same house next to the Pacific Pond all that time. I've had 3 children who've gone to school. I started a business in Portland in 1977.
Could you speak out just a bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Better. I started a business in 1977, so I was a small businessman who built a business and employed lots of people and paid a living wage and gave them insurance and disability and 401k and things like that because it was the right thing to do. I had good, loyal employees as a result. I was the founding president of Creative Portland. I'd gone back to school in my 50s to Muskie to learn more about public policy so that I could serve. And when I came out of Muskie School, while I was still working, I was the founding president of Creative Portland, and we worked on making the arts community, giving the arts community a seat at the table and a voice in policy. One of the things we did, of course, was to try and invite people to the city so that our population would grow and the support for the arts would increase, and that obviously has had some negative effects as well as positive effects. I wanted to talk about the slogan that I've been using, which is Portland isn't a business. 20 seconds. Portland isn't a business, Portland's a community. I'm concerned because we pay far too much attention to the business community and Portland's being run as a business. We should be paying attention to our community and things that can be done to benefit the community rather than business. Thank you.
I'll thank everyone later when we have more time. It sounds like we have a marathon. So my name is Tate Chung, and I live at 98 Winding Way. I've been a homeowner there for about 20 years, and I've been a resident of Portland for over 40 years. I have 2 kids in the Portland school system, and I have 2 elderly parents that live about a mile and a half away from our house, and they live and depend on Social Security. I've knocked on about 1,000 doors, and I've listened to our neighbors, and I've been humbled by their responses. Our neighbors are concerned about people who are experiencing homelessness, immigrant integration. They're worried about the condition of our streets and sidewalks. They're also worried about property taxes, our schools, and they're also worried about how and in which direction our city is developing. Many believe that our city is developing in the wrong direction, and that we should think about how to bring people together. And I believe that I can help. I have experience with City Hall. I was on the Portland School Committee. I was chair of Portland CBG, which oversaw social service grants that we gave out as a committee. And I also work for the Portland Police Department as a community policing liaison. And I use my MBA and my everyday job to create businesses and jobs for Catholic charities. And my personal, professional philosophy is servant leadership. I've devoted my entire life to servant leadership. A servant leader is someone who believes that they have the skills and confidence to bring everyone up and make sure that they all succeed rather than having a few succeed. And in order for be a servant leader, you have to have the skills and confidence to be able to lead, to listen, and collaborate. And I believe I have the skills to lead and collaborate. I've been listening and collaborating with neighborhood organizations and nonprofits for 25 years, and I hope to be your next city councilor for District 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And so, Mr. Chung, you can hold on to the mic and we'll start. First question on your end. And as I said, we'll have 90 seconds for each answer, and you'll have the same indicators of time. First question, how would you describe your political philosophy? Are you affiliated with any political movements or parties?
I'm not affiliated with any political parties. I consider myself to be a practical progressive. And the older I get, the more practical I get. I practically touched my toes today. So I see myself as somebody that, like I said, as a servant leader that wants to make sure that we raise the tide so that all boats float. But at the same time, because I have an MBA, when I look at financial situations or decisions, I try to look at a return on investment. So I try to be a compassionate, business-minded person. That would be, I don't know if there's a political affiliation for that, but that's how I would describe myself.
Thank you.
I was a Democrat when I started out, and I've continued to be a Democrat, but I find myself on the far left wing of the Democratic Party as the Democratic Party has migrated toward the right. I believe that government benefits people. I believe that government creates public good. I believe that the government can do things better than the private sector can do things. I think that the purpose of government is to serve the people, not to serve financial interests. And I could call myself an FDR Democrat, perhaps. Tough question.
I would actually affiliate myself with the Better Blue, and by that I mean Bernie Sanders. He's my guy. I phone banked for him for the California primary. I followed him for the last 4 years, but I've YouTubed him the past 30 years, and the guy has not changed who he is and what he fights for. Nothing he says today is radical because he's been fighting for it way before I was born. So I respect the guy, and I will continue to support him. I support the people. Main businesses are the backbones of this state. 2/3 of the people employed in this state are by small business owners. I started a small business 5 years ago. I've never been to college, and I consider myself right now the lucky one. There are a lot of millennials out there that can't afford housing, they can't have kids, and that is sad. I want to change that because I believe that we should have a chance to thrive just like the baby boomers, my parents' generation. Right now, back then a ham sandwich could get a loan in the 90s. There's no way someone like me or a millennial can do that, and that's why we have a housing crisis, because we can't afford to buy anything. And I want to bring bigger ideas to City Council that go beyond my district. I want to help the entire city, and I think we can unify if we just have some people in City Council that look out for the people they represent. Thank you.
I guess I am a registered Democrat. Having served in the state legislature representing a lot of the same district, I saw how hyper-partisanship can really get in the way of solving problems. The way I think we're supposed to work is, I'll give you an example of the affordable housing TIF bill. Well, when I was in the legislature, there was no such thing. And 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, one from Cornville, Maine, one from Windham, Maine, one from Bar Harbor, and this guy from Portland, we worked together and we crafted and sponsored and wrote the first affordable housing TIF bill, which has since been used here in Portland and across the state. That's how we're supposed to get things done. What I love about local service on the council is that, as I say, there's no Democrat or Republican way to patch a pothole, to plow a street. It's about solving problems. And that's how we worked when we did the traffic calming on all the streets between Congress and Brighton Avenue. That's how we worked together when Andy and I worked together and a lot of neighbors to restore Capissic Pond. It's about getting together, solving problems, starting with what you have in common and not focusing on what divides us. That's my philosophy on local service. And I think Tay actually said it best. That's, to me, what servant leadership is all about.
I describe myself as a progressive small business owner. To me, that means having progressive values that I actually live and implement every day. For several years now, I've been spoken out for increasing the minimum wage and removing the server tip wage, the sub-minimum wage. I've spoken out in favor of the Affordable Care Act on the steps of City Hall with Shelley Pingree. To me, I want to see a city where everyone, whether you're a busser or whether you're a city councilor or whether you're a lawyer, you can afford to live and work in this city. And so to me, it's more than politics. It's about supporting our local economy and our local city.
Thank you. And you guys are welcome to stand over. You don't have to feel obligated to do so. Good question. After much controversy, Riverside Street was chosen as the location for the new 150-plus bed homeless shelter. Do you think this is a move in the right direction for Portland? And how would you avoid replicating the problems in Bayside to another area of the city?
I think that's a great question. That's definitely a question that I think we all get when we're out there knocking on doors. It's a question that really matters to so many of us, particularly in District 3, abutting Riverside and over in District 4. In my mind, the Riverside shelter, the decision has been made by City Council. And we need, as a city, to make sure that mistakes aren't made, that we completely fund it in a way that makes sense, that we listen to the professionals when they say that we need to, where we put our resources. It's definitely a big issue facing the city, and I think that it's an important one that we get right this time.
Great. I feel, well, how many of you think that putting a 150-bed shelter out on Riverside Street is the best answer for Portland? Show of hands. Yeah, that's how I feel as well. As I said, a year and a half ago, when the city first said, well, let's put a 200-bed shelter in Nason's Corner, a lot of us thought that not only was that not a good idea, but the process was all wrong. There was no real meaningful way for community engagement. This is a tough issue. And so my view is, if elected to the city council, I would ask my colleagues and whoever is serving as mayor, we'll get to see them in a little bit. Hopefully this question will come up for them as well. I'd love to see a task force appointed. Citizens can volunteer to serve on a task force. We need people from all across the city representing different points of view, but one thing they would have in common is a commitment to reach a consensus on how the city can do a better job managing its chronic homelessness. I chaired that committee, the Health and Human Services Committee, previously on the council. No one ever suggested building a mega shelter back then. Everyone said we need smaller shelters that we can better serve the needs of subsectors of the population, such as a dry shelter for people dealing with addiction issues, mental illness treatment, as well as what hopefully will come out of the Barron Center debacle is a shelter, basically a hospice shelter for seniors, which makes a ton of sense at the Barron Center. That was one good thing that came out of that process, and I was happy to be part of that.
I think it's a horrible idea. I think we need to think about how many lives would be lost if we move the homeless shelter over by Riverside. I've had a business on Forest Ave for 5 years, and I'll tell you that the traffic is bumper to bumper, especially during the tourist seasons. And the fire department is going to spend not 20 minutes, but 2 hours, if not more, to get back from Riverside to the hospitals if someone is in need of medical care. I think that Portland has always had a homeless problem, and I feel like we've just shuffled this problem back and forth. And in the last 2 years, we have these developers that just want to clean up Portland of all of its disenfranchised and people that don't fit their bill. And I think that we should stand up to that. And I think we should put the homeless shelter in a place that gives them dignity and integrates them into the community and doesn't isolate them over on Riverside. This is something that we need to work together, and I think it can be done. I think we need to step up to the developers and the people that want to clean up Portland and the peninsula and let them know this is a home for everybody, even our homeless.
I'm not sure that it's the developers that want to clean up Portland. I think the city wants to clean up Portland, and they're carrying the water for the business community. I think that's a real problem in the city. To answer your question, though, I think, like everyone else, that the Riverside location is just terrible, and I can't understand. Well, I think I do understand how it came to that, but it's a real problem when our city council doesn't determine what the best thing for the city is, and then have the leadership to do that, despite what each neighborhood may have to say about it. Find the best solution, explain why the solution is the best, take people into the process early on so that so that the people who are making the decisions have all the information, have all the data, and then make a good decision and then stick to it. But that's not the process that we've seen. And as Ed said, there isn't enough public outreach in the process, and we don't have all the data that's needed to make a good decision. And then when the decision gets made, we don't stick to it. Needless to say, I think it should have stayed in Bayside. Thank you.
I think we all agree it was in the wrong location, and the process is not what it should have been. I used to be on the USM Department of Social Work Advisory Committee, and so this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart because I've spent 25 years working with people in poverty. For me, what I would have done is push back on the city council and talked about not just the financial costs, but all the other reverberating costs that would also have on nonprofits. For me, this is going to hurt Milestone, it's going to hurt the service providers, and obviously it's going to hurt the very people who can't get back and forth from Riverside to downtown where the services are. Those costs nobody really talked about, and we need to talk about those things as much as the bottom line. And when you want to talk about the overall cost, we have to do a bigger calculus, not just simple dollars and zeros. Because it takes a much more sophisticated view to say this is why we shouldn't do this. And there's a reason why we didn't have a mega shelter, because all these service providers said, if you build this, it's gonna hurt us. Milestone is on a shoestring budget. You don't wanna hurt that organization because they do so much good for the city. You don't wanna also hurt all the other service providers that help this population on the peninsula to be hurt as well. So for me, it was very short-sighted on that aspect, and we need to think bigger. And if we're gonna push back on the finance committee, you have to have somebody who has an MBA or thinks that way, and also have a social service heart to be able to make that point.
Thank you. What do you think are the challenges and opportunities facing District 3 specifically?
I think the challenges for District 3 is the same for 4 and 5. I believe that Portland is more than just the peninsula and off peninsula. I think what we've seen because of the development, you've seen a huge divide in two different Portlands. And what I'm most concerned about in Portland is losing our young people and housing our elderly. Because Portland used to have 8,000 kids in the Portland school system in 2000, now we have 6,500 kids. Our millennial population and near elderly population are the ones that sustain our population. If we lose those populations, if we lose our young families or young millennials to Westbrook or to South Portland or Biddeford-Saco, they're gonna make their homes there and they're gonna come back to Portland. What that does is that puts a bigger burden on people like my 84-year-old parents, on people like us. Our property taxes are gonna go even higher. I believe what needs to happen in the neighborhoods is more investment, especially in the neighborhood centers. We need to build infrastructure to make it more attractive and affordable for people to stay in the neighborhoods, because obviously what's happening on the peninsula is so outrageous that people can't live there anymore. We need to keep Portlanders in Portland and make Portland more unique, and that starts with all the different neighborhoods, including the 7 neighborhoods that are in District 3.
District 3 problems. Primary one is affordability. Can we folks who've lived there for a long time continue to afford to live there? given the fact that our taxes are going up, given the fact that there's demand for the housing that's keeping folks from being able to being able to have their children close by them, issues with whether or not the vacant land in our district is going to be developed in ways that are not compatible with our neighborhood. Development along the arteries makes sense, but seeing projects that are going in seems problematic. What other district-specific things? Lots of attention is being paid to what's going on in the peninsula, as someone said, but out in our district, we need basic services. We need to have playgrounds that are better. We need potholes filled. We need snow removed. We need sidewalks that are safe. And so many other problems exist that many things that should be taken care of are just not being taken care of.
I think that District 3 has a lot of resources. And by that I mean Kiwanis Pool. That place is a gem. I used to go there when I was little with my siblings. And that location is perfect for we should expand a fitness center to the pool for our elderly and our kids, and use it as a place to bring the community together. Kiwanis Pool is something that I want to work with because I think there's something there. One thing, this question is kind of funny because it's like so much has happened for all the other districts. District 3's been forgotten. So all I can tell you guys is it won't be forgotten anymore. I service a lot of business owners in Portland with my payments company. Emails and phone calls and visits to my office is something that I am very used to the past 5 years. And answering your emails and your phone calls, whether they're potholes or taxes or whatever the issues are, I'm going to be there to address them. But I'm also going to be there to address them in City Hall like they've never been addressed before. And I'm excited to do it because I know I can do it. I've never been a publisher of a magazine, but I'm a publisher of a magazine. I've never gone to college, but I know payments and stuff that you normally learn in college. So whatever I don't know, I can learn very quickly and represent with strength.
Just off the top of my head, some of the issues that I see and what I hear from people as I knock on doors and as I've been attending your neighborhood meetings for years, traffic, especially on the arterials, but cut-through traffic. Growth, how do we continue to grow without destroying the neighborhood? So neighborhood appropriate growth. Schools, playgrounds. One thing that's very important to a lot of people is protecting our natural environment. And we've had huge issues with stormwater over the past 20 years that we haven't addressed. So those are just some of the issues. And I would say, actions speak louder than words. We're very proud of the fact that some of the people in this room and I chaired the Hall School Building Committee that resulted in the new Amanda Rowe School, 95% of which was funded by the state. Working with Metro to improve bus service. We've got a whole new bus line now running through District 3, the heart of District 3, the Husky Line, express service. Working with Greater Portland Council of Governments to make sure that other communities are taking their share of the social service responsibility that puts pressure on us. And as I mentioned, one of the models that I used for process was what I led in terms of creating the stormwater fee, which was very controversial. Took 2 years, but we had a very diverse group of stakeholders to come together, environmentalists, business people, homeowners, that agreed we needed to do something to clean up and stop raw sewage from flowing into our rivers, like the Fore River right here. So those are some of the things that I see as being ongoing needs of District 3.
I think we all nailed it. Affordable housing and growth are two of the biggest things that is facing District 3 and the rest of the city. I think that this city needs to think about how we're growing. I'm a restaurant owner. I'm not a developer. I'm not a city planner. But if I look at a map of the city of Portland, District 3 is where we're going to be growing for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And we need to sit and think hard now about how we represent our values in that growth. We need to work in a different way than we currently work on the peninsula in seeing that growth. We need to define transit corridors and support those transit corridors better. But that growth to me is inspiring. I think that we have a huge opportunity to have a strong representative in District 3 who sees the future and sees what this district can and should be. Bless you, sir. To me, District 3 is the future of our city, and I'm really excited that so many people have turned out and care so much about District 3.
Thank you. What can be done to reduce property tax burdens?
This is a question that I know every single one of us gets probably at every third door. Property taxes are probably, along with affordable housing, one of the biggest questions that we get, that I certainly get when I'm out talking to people. It is such a complicated and big issue, and I think that it needs to be looked at, not just at the city council level, but at the state level as well. We all understand that the city is growing and that the value of our city is growing, but to be able to make sure that matches with the state, make sure that the funding formula at the state level is fair and is incredibly important. To me, the most important value that I can give and that any city councilor can give, beyond fighting for a fair funding formula and fair property tax at the state level, is to be able to convey to everybody, to every constituent in our district, where that money is going and why we're spending it. I think that the scariest thing as a homeowner is to pay taxes to the state, not exactly know where it comes back to the city, and then not know how it's spent. And to be able to be clear on that is the most important thing as a city council.
Thanks. The current mill rate in the city of Portland is $23.31 per thousand of the value of your home. That's a 3.7% increase over the previous year. I get a question oftentimes saying, with all the new growth in Portland, why aren't my property taxes going down? And as a former finance committee member who studied the budget, that one of the challenges is the biggest chunk of the city's budget is personnel costs to fund all the departments that provide all the services. Every year there's cost of living increases, there's health insurance increases, so the total amount of new valuation in the city, the new growth in the city, doesn't even cover completely the annual increases just to stay even. So what I would say is that from a budgeting standpoint, budgets are about making choices. If we don't want to see property taxes going up and up and up faster than the rate of inflation, then it means we have to make some tough choices. And we have to do this collaboratively with our folks, our partners on the school board. We have to figure out, is there a more efficient way of doing things? I know I ruffled some feathers at times when I was on the council because I asked some tough questions on departments. Why is our staffing levels in one department 5 times higher than every other city in New England of a comparable size? Those are the kind of questions that I think a councilor needs to ask if you really want to make a meaningful effort at reducing the property tax burden on folks here in the city of Portland. Property tax is a very regressive tax. The value of your property has nothing to do typically with your ability to pay. So that's why I think we need to focus.
So I don't know much about property tax, but I know this. It hasn't been assessed in a really long time. So when you look at all of the homes in the West End and the East End that haven't been assessed, they're not paying the property tax that they should be paying. And I hate to say this, but I tax the rich. I mean the super rich, and by that I mean firefighters, libraries, schools, hospitals, roads, programs. These things cost money. And the elderly folks in our community, they need tax relief. So what we should do is we should subsidize for them entities that are not in Maine. If you're an outer state developer and you bought up a block, you're an outer state entity, your property tax should be higher. And in return, the relief should go to the elderly. The relief should go to those who need it most because they're the ones that are most vulnerable. And we have a really depleting population. We can't afford to lose anybody. But the rich are coming here, and they're coming here because climate change is good for Maine. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's true. It's not good, but I think you guys know what I mean. And we have people here. We should tax them. We just need somebody on the council to say it. And I will say it. And I think we're all going to be happy for it.
The elephant in the room is the coming revaluation. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know that the value of all of our homes is going to go up, and whether the proportion that it goes up in District 3 is going to be as great as the proportion it goes up on the peninsula will really affect what our taxes are going to be. If our rate of increase is, say, 20% and their rate of increase is 30%, our taxes will go down as we rejigger the formula. But that doesn't address the endemic problem, which is that everything costs a lot and we have to prioritize what we spend money on and what we don't spend money on. It's just like running a home budget where you have some fixed costs that you have to meet. You have to pay your firefighters, you have to pay your policemen, you have to maintain the roads. But in any budget, you have to say, well, this is more important, and so we're going to fund that. And so far, we've said that what's more important is we'll spend more money, rather than what's more important is that we reduce taxes throughout the city.
Portland does have the highest mill rate in Cumberland County, but from 2010 to 2017, it actually had the 5th slowest increases in mill rates. It's only been the last 3 years it's gone up significantly. And what's unique about Portland is that Portland is actually not just a city, it's a regional hub. And that's one of the reasons why our taxes are so high. When we have a shelter, it's not a Portland shelter, it's a regional shelter. Even though South Portland is the 5th largest city in Maine, and Westbrook is approaching as one of the largest cities in Maine, they don't have a homeless shelter. And they don't have the size of fire departments that we have, because our fire departments service other departments in other cities as well. And that's one of the reasons why it's so high. And what we have to do is look at our budget not as this is our city compared to other cities, and spend $38,000 of taxpayer dollars to do an audit on the fire department, only to find out that our city is a regional service. Our fire department helps other cities that don't have the fire engines that it has. And also we have about 60,000 people that come to Portland to work, and then you throw in people who come and use our services, whether it's the hospitals or universities or come to shop. Those are all people that aren't Portland residents that are using our services. So we have to look at other options where we can increase revenue based on the number of people who are using our regional services, not just city services.
Next question is, if you had to cut 5% in the city budget, in what areas would you look first?
5% it depends. I mean, it's you could do a haircut and say it's all the same, but you have to look at essential programs and services. So what happened in Farmington, do you want to cut the fire department when a catastrophe like that happens? One of the reasons why the fire departments are growing is because of climate change. They have to look at the infrastructure and make sure that as water rises, we have an old infrastructure that we have to take care of. So for me, the first thing that you have to look at is health, life, and safety. And you look at the vulnerable populations to make sure that they don't get cut. The second thing is, where we can, let's look at not floating more bonds or our own money to pay for things that we can't afford. Let's look for state and federal help where we can. So that's where I would look first. But essentially you have to go through the entire process and figure out what are things that are actually going to affect people's lives and make sure that they don't get cut, and then look at other things where, whether it's development or things that aren't actually hurting or affecting the safety of the public is where I would look first. And that's what we did with the Portland school system. We would always look at making sure that essential program and services weren't cut, and then look at other things as a potential ways to cut things so that we can make sure that the health and well-being and safety and our regulations are met.
I would probably say that if I was looking for places to cut, I would look for services that we're providing to the development community and the business community that they should be providing to themselves. I think that there's been emphasis on economic development, but the development that we've seen has not necessarily been good jobs, and the development that we've seen has been very homegrown. Things that have been successful have been things like IDAX and WEX, which started from nothing and then grew and grew and grew in Portland, rather than creating opportunities for out-of-state folks to come here and build things. Somebody's quacking. That said, I think cutting 5% is really hard to do. And again, you have to prioritize what's needed. As Kay said, you don't want to cut services that are keeping people alive or that are fighting fires or providing police services, or fixing potholes or moving snow. But unless until a really close look at the budget happens, we don't really know what they are. Of course, when the budget comes through, it's designed by the city manager, and so it's going to have the city manager's thoughts built into it when it goes to the finance committee. That may be an issue as well.
So I mentioned earlier that I service with my payments company a few hundred business owners here in Portland. They're small business owners. They're people probably like you and me in this room. And what I found out not that long ago is that large corporations in Portland who can't integrate people into their workforce or have a workforce shortage, like we're all feeling those effects, are getting subsidies from the city to make up for those losses. Why are we paying corporations in the city money so they can employ their workforce? That's their problem. And most of the time, these are hotels, IDEX, Unum, WEX. Why are we paying to make sure they're thriving? It should be the other way around. And that is, I think, there's a lot more than 5% we could cut from them. Honestly.
Considering that the city side of the budget is about $260 million, 5% is somewhere then around $13 million. I would not advocate cutting $13 million from the city's budget. I don't think we have a fat budget. But what I would do is take a hard look at departments. One of the things I like about benchmarking is saying, where are we overstaffed compared to comparable cities in New England? Where are we understaffed? For example, the police department, actually, we're understaffed if you compare us to like population cities in New England. So that's where I would start and say, as a general rule of thumb, if there's departments that were overstaffed compared to our peers, that's where I would first take a hard look at. In terms of generating revenue, I think that's what we ought to be looking at, is where can we maximize revenues, non-property tax revenues. Every year I served on the taxation committee in the legislature. It's a tough sell, but I would advocate we continue to go up there, and I would urge all of our mayoral candidates to put this as a high priority. If we could get a penny on the sales tax as a local option tax, or a regional option tax, which is probably more likely, that would be, to me, a far better answer to reducing the property tax burden than cutting city services that are already, frankly, in some cases, stretched. As I mentioned, the police department dealing with the drug epidemic that they're dealing with, they're understaffed. Thank you.
I think Ed's right, 5% is a lot of money. And it would be very hard to find that $13 million. Thank you for doing the math for all of us. I appreciate that. It would be very hard to find that $13 million in just cuts. I think that looking at revenue, looking at other avenues of revenue, looking at other areas where we provide subsidies is the important part. To further Ed's point about the local option tax, as a business owner, I own two restaurants here in town. I write sales tax checks to the state of Maine, to Augusta, every month, and they are enormous compared to the fees that we pay for permits. We probably pay $5,000 in permits a year. We pay twice that in sales tax at each of our businesses every month. To be able to find some local option. As a restaurant owner, I would welcome a tax on restaurants, a sales tax on restaurants. That is one of the biggest industries here in town. And a lot of people from out of town are using that. And to be able to bring a little bit of that money into the coffers of the city, I think is important. Additionally, I want to take a moment. I know there are a number of firefighters, there are a number of teachers here in the room tonight, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you. I would not balance the budget on the backs of firefighters and teachers. I think that's not the way to do it. I really appreciate all of your service. Thank you.
What would you do to help housing affordability in the city? What would you do to help housing affordability in the city?
It's like we knew your questions ahead of time. I think that we've all said it already a couple times, housing affordability is one of the biggest issues that our city faces in the future. Looking forward, as one of the struggles I've had as a business owner for 6 years now is that it's difficult to find staff because it's difficult to find staff that can live and work in our city. It's a huge problem. I have a dishwasher, one of our best dishwashers, and I don't know if any of you work in restaurants or have ever worked in restaurants. The dishwashers are the most important employees in a restaurant. I had a dishwasher that he ended up moving out to Westbrook because he couldn't live in town, and he couldn't get home from work because we closed at 1 in the morning. He couldn't get home from work afterwards because there wasn't public transit for him, and we lost him because he couldn't afford to live and work in the city. I think that we need to take a hard look at where we can support growth throughout the city, and we can see more affordable housing built. I very strongly support the social services that we spend, and I think that we need to bring in high-end development, but we really need to focus on affordable housing more than anything else in the city.
Another quick show of hands. How many of you have heard of the Recode Committee or the Recode process in Portland? Okay, a few of you. One of the things that to me is the first thing that I would seek to do as a counselor is to engage with my colleagues on the council and the new mayor, as well as the public, to focus on removing regulatory barriers to the creation of all types of affordable housing here in Portland. Our land use code, our zoning regulations, they can be kind of dry, I admit, and maybe the inner geek in me loves this stuff, but that's what's standing in the way of both not-for-profit and for-profit developers from building more housing in the city of Portland. We need to allow sufficient density. We should have density bonuses for lifetime guarantees of affordable housing. That to me is very important, but you can't do that without an active public engagement process. Because if you do that without engaging the public, when it finally comes out, there will be a huge backlash. So we need to do a much better job of engaging people on that. I think another point, and especially for District 3, I hear it all the time from people, we need to remove the barriers to developing accessory dwelling units, formerly known as in-law units, accessory dwelling units. I also think that one way we can help the affordable housing challenge is continuing to improve our public transit system. I'm passionate about public transit because it helps people get, and Andrew just said, some of the challenges, 1 in the morning, not so good. But for the rest of the day, if we can help people move around, that gives them more opportunity.
So this is a great one for me because my parents, who are in the room right now, actually help low-income families in Portland and work with the city and the shelters to place low-income families. They have over 100 units from the last 25 years of building their real estate empire here in Portland, and every single unit is an affordable housing unit. So 2 years ago, I purchased my first 2-unit, and I have 2 families, immigrant refugees, that occupy both units, and it's affordable housing. And I have a lot of ideas on how we can stop developers from slashing affordable housing. Let's look at Bayside Village. It just got sold to Port Property Management. Port Property Management is my landlord in my office that I have in Longfellow Square. When he first saw me, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, don't you need an $800 check because you're running for city council?" I didn't know about finance law, so I really didn't answer him, but yeah, I need money. I didn't get a penny because he knows that I side with our current mayor. I side with someone that's going to make sure we have a city for everybody, unlike some of his opponents that are real estate lawyers looking to take that away from us. If I'm in city council, that will not happen.
As a business person and muskie, I learned to do the research and to gather the data before I made a decision or to make a recommendation. That means to me reaching out to all people in the community who have an interest and have concerns about that. And that means everybody from developers to real estate people to Portland Housing Authority to the community to try and discover both what people want and what people need. In starting to do that, what I'm learning is we can do lots of high-end housing, we do, and people can do lots of low-income housing because it's subsidized by federal dollars. the hole that we have in the market is the middle class hole, and that's the piece that needs to be addressed. And given the fact that the cost of land is so high, the cost of creating condos and small apartments is very, very high. So one of the ideas that I've had is to open up the city's land bank and for the city to offer $1 a year leases for a period of time so that homes and apartments and condos can be built more affordably and address specifically this 120%, 150% median income. Thanks.
Well, the Trump administration is not going to give us more money through HUD to build affordable housing. And Maine State Housing and the state of Maine is not going to float more bonds to build lots of new housing in Portland. And the city of Portland is not going to give out more TIFs, and we only have about $10 million in our housing fund to build affordable housing. So there's only a couple ways where you can increase the number of affordable housing, and that's rezoning density at places where they have high density. That's one. And all the things that Ed talked about is absolutely true. Those are the things that we got to look at. The other thing is to build infrastructure where you welcome people to build affordable housing or apartments or condominiums. And to me, those are places like the 7 neighborhood centers that we have in District 3. Whether it's Libbytown, it's USM Oakdale, Woodford's Corner, all those places where people are naturally convening and businesses are starting up. If you make those places attractive, where you have businesses and you also have bus shelters and public transportation hubs, it's what other big cities do. It's what Cambridge does compared to what downtown Boston does. If you want to keep young families here, and if you want to make affordable apartments and condominiums so that elderly and neo-elderly could be where they want to be in their own neighborhoods, those are places that you need to create and develop. I think public process is absolutely critical. Not everyone's going to want that, but you have to have that process. Unfortunately, when Ed had a process out in Stroudwater, and the Stroudwater family community wanted something like that, he didn't listen to them. And what I will promise to you is that I will believe in transparency and actually listening to people and following through and not having any surprises.
Thank you very much, candidates. That concludes the long form question round. I appreciate everyone keeping to the time. I think Zach's a little bit disappointed he didn't get to this noisemaker, but we appreciate it.
Is that a challenge?
So the next round is the lightning round, which you'll see before you. There's a sheet of paper, green on one side, red on the other. You'll be asked a series of yes or no questions, and to indicate your answer, simply hold up with the side facing out, yes or no to each question.
Which one's yes?
What's that?
Which one's yes?
The check mark, the green. Green is yes, red is no. And we'll just hold it up for a couple seconds so everyone can see. Would you vote to fund construction on the 150-bed homeless shelter in Riverside as it is currently planned? No. Would you ban non-owner occupied Airbnbs in a way similar to South Portland?
Hold them for a few seconds.
Do you favor using city-owned land to develop affordable housing?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do you favor using city-owned land to develop affordable housing? Would you support a charter reform to eliminate the city manager position and install an executive mayor? Do you support ranked choice voting for city elections? Do you support public clean election funding for municipal elections? Do you favor needle exchanges? Do you support safe injection spaces? Do you support local option taxes? Do you favor making Congress and Park two-way? A very hot topic. Considering all modes from transportation such as cars, transit, and cycling. Oh wait, that's not what's right in there. Sorry, for real.
I was getting excited.
Just kidding. Do you support any form of rent stabilization? support municipal funding for universal pre-K. Thank you very much. That concludes the Lakeland.
The next section is going to be the trivia round, and I believe Steph is going to help us ask trivia questions. Hi, Steph.
I'm Stephanie, and I'm probably from Riverton.
So if you know the answer, just raise your hand and she'll.
So just raise your hand if you know the answer, and one of the spotters in the audience will decide who raise your hand first, and then you'll have the chance to answer the question.
Name 4 neighborhood associations in District 3.
Libbytown, Nason's Corner, Woodford's Oakdale, the Woodford's Oakdale Neighborhood Association, and the Friends of Woodford's Corner.
What is the name of the intersection of Woodford Street and Brighton Avenue?
Woodford's Corner? No. Oh, I'm sorry, Brighton, sorry.
Rosemont Corner. What possessive thing is missing from Woodford's Corner, otherwise known as what punctuation? Okay, that's the louder. Sorry. The question was, what possessive thing is missing from Woodford's Corner?
A apostrophe.
That's correct. Name a Portland trail in District 3.
Oh gosh, next.
Capisc Pond Trail.
Yes. What style of dough is used by Tony's Donuts?
Flour?
It's a raised donut.
Cake, not
Yeah, raised cake donut.
Yeah.
Okay.
What restaurant will be relocating to the former Espo's location?
We got it. Glorious.
That's correct. Where is the roof of the old Union Station train shed now located?
Thompson's Point.
That's correct.
Finish the question.
The Portland Jetport designated with what acronym? PWM. What does PWM stand for?
Portland, Westbrook, Maine.
That's correct.
Thanks, Stephanie.
That was fun.
So we'll now conclude with closing statements. I think they have the mic. So you'll have up to 3 minutes to make a closing statement, and that will conclude today's.
I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank the organizers for putting this event. I want to thank the other candidates for wonderful interaction and part of the democratic process that we were all involved today. I just want to say that government is about compromise, and it's not as quick as you want it to be, but that's because we have so many different points of view. As you saw, we have 5 different points of view, and so many different constituents, and even within District 3, there are 7 different neighborhoods. And we have an incredible diverse population now. 20%, 25% of Portland schools is ESL, and 50% is multicultural, and 15% of Portland's population is foreign-born. And that has changed the landscape of Portland. In that same time, our elderly population has also grown, as well as the millennial population. And like I said earlier, we've lost our young families. So our focus and our policies change. But in order for that to happen, you have to have someone who's rooted in process and willing to be transparent. And I have 3 examples where I've done that, and it's taken a long time to achieve these things. One was called the Portland Jobs Alliance, where it took us almost a year working with the CDBG. Actually, it took about 2 years, and Ed was part of that CDBG where we changed the funding. Where we changed the funding so that we can invest in creating jobs. And that took us almost 2 years of strategic planning on Thursday nights, I believe, with Ed and a couple other people, to change the funding so that we can create funding to create jobs for low-income people in Portland. And that led to almost 400 people getting jobs through the Portland Jobs Alliance. And in order for that to happen, Gerald Schaufel and I worked with, when I was at CEI, we worked with about 6 different social service agencies so that we can all agree on coming up with one application form so that we can process as many people as possible. I also did that with LANA, which is Language Access for New Americans, and that took about 3 years for that to happen. In order for that to happen, we had to rally all these funders together in a room, as well as service providers that worked with immigrants and refugees and said, what is the one topic that we can all agree on that's going to raise the tide and float all boats? Which is, prior to LANA, there was no standard for interpreters in the state of Maine. Literally, there were stories where you would have a child interpret for their parent that they had, terminal cancer. And in fact, in the state of Maine, Maine Medical Center was the first hospital, the first public entity to be sued for language, for denial of language access. And LANA was able to do that, and I was able to work with all these different service providers and funders to make that happen. The third is, it took me about 4 years working with other committee members on CDD to change our funding. Prior to, when I was on the board, we would always have a cookie cutter kind of formula, and we pushed back. And because we were able to push back and change the funding formula, we were able to fund 2 new organizations. Cultivating Communities wouldn't have happened if we didn't dog the council and ask them to change, as well as the bicycle hub, which is now the gear hub. So I promise you that I will be transparent and I will work behind the scenes to make those things happen. Thank you.
I think a lot about why we have a government and why we have a city council and what our job actually is. I think the purpose of government is to make its citizens' lives better, and I think to some degree we're losing sight of that. And I think that we need to refocus the city on the community and how we can improve the lives of all of us in the community. One of the things that I've seen in my time living in Portland is that we're always looking forward and we're rarely looking backward. One of the things I'd like to see on the council would be to examine the decisions that have been made in the past and what the actual outcomes were. We make these decisions, we promote these policies, we spend money, but rarely do we go, well, what actually happened and was it what we expected to have happen? Another thing that I wish we would do would be to listen to the task force recommendations that get made. We spend a lot of time and effort and have a lot of good input from people about what should be done. There's a task force on the eastern waterfront. There was a task force on Franklin Street Arterial, and when it came time to work on that, it got cherry-picked, and the things that were really vital and important never happened. So I'd like to see task force balanced with more citizens and fewer economic stakeholders, and then for the city council to take that work more seriously. I think that the question of how do we support the middle class in the city is a really vital one. Otherwise, we're going to wind up with a city of the rich and poor. And we want to find ways to support unions. We've lost the middle class because unionism has been vilified over the past 30 years. When we had unions, we had good jobs, and we had families who were able to afford to live in decent housing and not have to take 2 jobs. So I would like to see the city of Portland support unions, insist on using union labor when they do jobs in the city, and to ask the developers, or to demand the developers use union people to do the work on their buildings. How can change be made? We've heard a lot of great ideas and great intentions, but trying to actually do these things is really hard. Every candidate makes promises, and we rarely see them happen. I'd like to focus on one big thing. There's some important thing that is overriding that we should really focus on. Perhaps that's housing, perhaps that's climate change, perhaps it's something else. Thank you.
5 years ago, I started a credit card company because I believed there was a better way for small business owners to connect with their customers. I also knew that I could take a large chunk of revenue from the big banks who currently run this industry and put it in the hands of the working class, someone like me, and I did. Since then, I have helped dozens of businesses from conception to fruition by simply answering their calls and emails and just being available. While working with many of our local businesses, I noticed there was a lack of recognition for our immigrant entrepreneurs and communities. So I founded and currently publish a magazine called Incomer, which is dedicated to highlighting these people. If there isn't a pattern here, it's coming. In the past year, I have also worked with the City of Portland to provide affordable housing for 2 low-income refugee families that currently reside in a 2-unit I own on Allen Ave. District 3, I will always answer your calls and reply your emails. This is easy for me. I will advocate using our resources for public spaces, clean parks, safer roads, and more recreational fun for our district. I will clearly deliver the message that potholes and neighborhood repairs are today's issues and not tomorrow's problems. I will defend affordable housing against big developers who wish to build luxury condos and Airbnb neighborhood markets. I will protect funding for our public schools and related programs because our children will always come first and deserve the best education we can provide. I will speak up at every meeting and never neglect to address the issues of District 3, no matter how alone I feel. And I will always work for the people that elected me, not those who wish to influence my position with big money interests. This November 5th, vote for the candidate that would vote for you. This girl.
Thank you. Once again, really appreciate the efforts of the Libbytown Neighborhood Association and the Nason's Corner Neighborhood Association for pulling us all together. This is one heck of a turnout, and thank you all for coming out. And I want to, again, thank my colleagues up here because it's great to have choices, isn't it? And you've got some great choices up here. So why am I running and why am I asking for your vote on November 5th? Well, I think Woody Allen said 99% of success is showing up. And I've been showing up for the residents of District 3 for many years, whether I was on the council or not, whether I was in the state legislature or not. And I don't show up just during campaign season, whether it's neighborhood cleanups, neighborhood meetings, neighborhood potlucks, shoveling some dirt at the new community garden that we all work so hard on. Showing up, to me, is how I listen and how I learn. Because, and Zach is the one that I always associate with saying this, the city council and city staff don't have a monopoly on good ideas. It's why my route and what I've learned even more so over the past 3 years watching the shelter debacle unfold was citizen engagement. As I said, I've led task forces on very controversial issues, stormwater fees, disposable bag fees, both of which took time, took effort, put diverse people in the room. Some of my colleagues thought that nothing good was going to come out of either one of these task forces because the room was so diverse. But we took the time to listen and learn from each other, and we ended up with really landmark ordinances. The bag fee was the first in the state of Maine. We led the whole state, and now the legislature passed a plastic bag ban for statewide now, after we got 20 other communities to follow Portland's lead. So I'm not afraid to take a strong position, which is why, as my postcard says, a strong leader who listens and learns. Listening to the residents of District 3, whether it was working with Andy and Don and Steve Andrews and all the Lois Winter on the Capissic Pond project, the road diet we did over on Outer Congress Street to improve the pedestrian and bike safety in Stroudwater, all the traffic calming from Douglas Street all the way over to Craigie Street. Instead of doing one street, we did it all. As I said, pulling people together to work on the replacement for the Hall School with the beautiful Amanda Rowe School. It's getting people together, it's listening, it's learning. It's not always glamorous, is it? But this is what's important as a district councilor. My pledge to you is I will continue to listen to you, I will continue to learn from you, and I will carry your voice forward to City Hall because District 3 needs and deserves a strong, effective voice at City Hall so we can get two-way traffic on Congress and Park. And I'll go one further. I'd like to dust off the study that would eliminate some of those on-ramps that are duplicative and redundant on Congress Street. So I really ask for your support on November 5th, and thank you for coming out tonight.
I have the unique opportunity, I guess, to close out this portion of the evening. I'll keep it short. I know that many of you here are here for this, but so many of you more are here to hear Pius and then the mayor and the mayoral candidates speak as well. I do want to thank and repeat what I think we all have said. Thank you, everybody, for showing up tonight, being part of this. Thank you to all the neighborhood associations for putting tonight together, organizing tonight. Thank you to the JCA for hosting us. And thanks for listening to us all speak for an hour now. Hearing these questions, hearing our answers inspires me for the city of Portland. I think we have a really bright future, and I'm really excited about that. We all choose to live in this city. We choose to live in this city because of the opportunity it provides, because of the work-life balance, because it's just better than any other city out there, guys. But if we cannot provide that opportunity for everybody, we really won't be a city for anybody. As a parent of young children who will be in the public school systems till, again, 2035, I did the math and it scares me at times. As a small business owner who employs 40 full-time employees, I'm uniquely prepared to make that to make sure that there's opportunity for everybody in this city. I will have a unique voice on city council, and I'm excited to put that to work. I look forward to connecting to many more of you face to face tonight or out of doors over the next 5 weeks. And if you are excited about this, please find some people with Andrew Volk t-shirts, put your email down. I'd love to get you out there with us. Thank you all. Thank you to everybody, and have a great night.
On behalf of all the neighborhood associations, I want to thank all the District 3 candidates for appearing tonight. Round of applause, please. Until 7:30, and Pius Ali will speak. He's running for the at-large seat. And then at 7:35, we'll start the mayoral debate forum. All right, thank you, everyone.
This was fun. That was a lot of fun. Yes, John, that was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah, see?
It's going to be in alphabetical order, so it's have to lay out. But it's going to be right here.
1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah.
out of it.
Me too. See, thank you for introducing yourself. came.
Hello, everyone. We're going to start again. I've been asked to plug that we do have a donation box at the door. If you like what you've seen today and you are excited for the mayor's forum, then please donate. We'd greatly appreciate it. So Pius Ali is running for the at-large district. He's unopposed, and we've given him 5 minutes here today to speak to the audience. So Pius, would you like to come up and say what you want to say?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the neighborhood associations who put this together. And thanks to Andy, Tay, Layla, and Ed. That was an amazing engagement. And I'm looking forward to, I guess I'm the opening act for the mayoral candidate. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. I was talking to someone at the back and I said, I'm going to stand in front for the next 5 minutes and debate against myself. And I don't know how to do that. So, my name is Pius Ali. I am seeking re-election and I'm running unopposed. However, on my platform, there are 2 things that I want to share with you. 5 minutes will not be that much, so I will just talk a little bit about it, and then you can go on my website, piusali.com. If you are interested in being part of what I'm going to share, please feel free to email me, and I will reach out to you. One is engagement between the city and residents. We all know what happened when we roll out how we are going to relocate the shelter. We didn't do much engagement. We do a lot of communications, but not so much on engagement. We are a city of 67 or so thousand. We should be able to engage those of you that we lead. We should be able to take a lot of input. Yes, you do come to city council meeting, but it is very difficult for some of us, including me, to stand in front of people who have a lot of power, with hundreds of people behind you, and talk within 3 minutes. So I will work with my colleagues and advocate for an office which will be Office of Engagement and Inclusivity. And that office will be separate from each of the city departments. The role of that office is to make sure that anytime that the city is going to roll out something or take a decision that will impact any community, that office will reach out to that community, start having a conversation before we roll that out. And I have more of it that I can share. I only have 5 minutes. The other one is when I was on the housing committee, the chair of the housing committee is here. We asked the city staff to give us a list and compile all the list of the lands that belong to the city, so that we can look at that and hopefully find some of it that can be built on and use that to build housing, to look at how that, and make sure that that will help alleviate some of the housing crisis that we want. The past few months, I've been talking to many different groups. There are many conversations going around in the city of people with different ideas on what needs to be done to solve our housing crisis. The city alone cannot solve this. It either has to be regional, or we need to go out in the community and listen to what other people. There's a lot of many different ideas going on. In the first quarter of the year, this coming year, 2020, I will work with my colleagues and bring together all these many conversations that is going out in the community to have a whole day housing summit. Look at that lands that we have, the compilation of the lands that we have, look at the many other conversations that is going on, and see what are the many ways, not just one, because just one way cannot solve the housing crisis that we have. How can we work together, not just as elected officials or city officials, but us in City Hall and the community at large to alleviate the housing crisis that we have. Thank you. Good luck tonight. I'm looking forward to work with all of you, either way, and all of you. Have a good evening.
So begins the mayoral race portion of tonight's forum. As before, we will begin with an opening statement from each candidate, which can be up to 2 minutes in length, and then we'll begin with long-form questions. If applause can be somewhat limited or eliminated just for time, that would be helpful, just so we can get through as many of these community-submitted questions as possible. And I guess we'll start with Councilor Thibodeau with a 2-minute statement opening and go down the line.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Libbytown Neighborhood Organization for putting this on. Thank you all for being here. My name is Spencer Thibodeau, and I have the unique honor to run to be the next mayor of my hometown. A lot has changed since I was adopted here 31 years ago. My parents bought a home not too far away here on Bradley Street. It was an old home, and they've worked to fix that home up. They've done it about twice now, and my mom probably wishes it was a little bit faster than my dad, who actually worked on it. My dad is a carpenter, self-employed. My mom is a nurse at Maine Medical Center, and they gave my sister and I everything a young child could ask for. I have fond memories of walking through on Elizabeth Street on our way to Nathan Clifford and King Middle School, and stopping at Papa Corsetti's on the way, and stopping at Muhammad's 7-Eleven on the way to school. And what I tell people is that the neighborhood raised us. For me, what I'm most concerned as I returned here 6 years ago from law school is that the dream that my parents sought to own a home in the neighborhood is not possible for my generation or for generations or folks who intend to come to our city. And likewise, the dream that they have to stay in their home is equally becoming less and less possible. And with all of these challenges that we face as a city, my belief is that we need a mayor with the energy, the enthusiasm, and a fresh approach at City Hall to get things done for you. But I'm going to plan to use my experience on the council to get to work for you as well. We're going to hear a lot about collaboration in this race. I'm pleased to announce the support of many of my colleagues, the majority of my colleagues on the City Council. I believe the next mayor has to be able to work with the City Council and the City Manager's Office. I look forward to telling you more about that in the coming minutes here going forward.
And if I can just interrupt, some of you might not have been here, and I didn't explain to you that you'll get a warning when 20 seconds remain, and then the gong indicates that your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ethan Strimling. I'm the current mayor of the city of Portland, and I appreciate your being here tonight. Honestly, a lot of people ask me, why do you do this work? Why, after all of the turmoil and the turbulence in the first term, would you want to do this again? And I'll tell you a little bit that you may not know about me. I don't know if I'm the only one up here, but I grew up in affordable housing, split family. My mother raised me as a single mother for the first half of my adolescence, and then my father. I ran an agency called Learning Works, worked with kids who had dropped out of school, adults who didn't know how to read, families that didn't have the skills to be able to survive in our economy. And last winter, I spent some time, as I was thinking about whether to run again, knocking on doors around the city. And I heard from families over and over again, middle class, working class families trying to survive in this economy. This economy has this rising wave that unfortunately is not lifting all boats. It is sweeping people out to sea. People are finding it more and more difficult to live in our city, our working class and our middle class. And as the mayor, I am their voice. And I am very proud that in the first term, when I look back at what we got done around providing property tax and rent relief for low-income seniors so they could stay in their homes, and rebuilding our elementary schools so we have equity for all kids, and raising up the wages of workers in our city who are building the buildings around us, and building the affordable housing that we so desperately need. Because the moneyed interests in this city, the developers, the multi-million-dollar hotels and the million-dollar condos that are going up on every corner, they run too much of City Hall. And my job is to be your voice, and I will bring that voice again for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Kate Snyder, and I'm running to be your next mayor.
I was pleased to be here earlier this evening as a resident of District 3. My husband and I have owned our house on Kenwood Street for 22 years. We have 3 children who were born in Portland and attended Portland Public Schools. We love this city. I'm running because I'm optimistic about Portland. I think Portland is a wonderful place to live, and I think that we need somebody in the mayor's seat who is speaking for all of us. Folks who are on fixed budgets, folks who are sending kids to school, people who are struggling with their tax bills and are worried every time the budget season comes around and we're discussing increases that feel unsustainable. I served for 6 years as an elected official in Portland. I was on the school board as an at-large representative. 4 of my 6 years I was elected by my colleagues on the board to be in leadership positions, 2 years as finance chair and 2 years as chair of the board. Many of you may recall that 2007 was a tough year for Portland Public Schools. We ran a deficit and the city took over the school's finances. And my colleagues on the board and I quickly learned how to work as a team and how to work with folks at City Hall, both the elected officials and staff, to right the ship. And then the recession hit. So what turned out as a difficult start remained a difficult and tough and challenging period of time because the economy had people losing jobs, taking pay cuts like we did in our house, and significantly worried not only about their tax bill, but every bill that was coming through. I have the experience of being an elected official in Portland who understands how to manage through the tough times and is exceedingly optimistic about our thriving and growing and healthy city that we need to continue to invest in and work together so that we're making good choices and we have good outcomes as a community. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Travis Curran. A lot of you don't know me, I'm a waiter at Empire Chinese Kitchen. Before that I worked at Auto Pizza and I made the pizza. If you don't like auto pizza, it's because I stopped making it, all right? I am the working class of Portland. I rent, I live in District 1, and I'm terrified of the revaluation because I might get priced out of my apartment. I sold my car 2 years ago because I'm a pedestrian and parking prices were killing me. And I seek to represent every voice here in the room because I understand and I'm gonna listen to you. I don't have political experience like my candidates, and I'm gonna learn and I'm gonna gain political experience because I'm gonna be your voice in City Hall. And I mean, what else can I tell you? I used to be a tour guide. I used to ride a Segway around. I used to be a housekeeper. I was a carpenter. I used to play my ukulele on the street during the First Friday Art Walk. I'm a very friendly guy. I don't have the relationships my opponents have with the city council, but I'm gonna make those relationships, and I'm gonna stand up for everyone in the room when it comes to being a voice on city council. What else do I got? No, housing crisis affects me more than anyone else because might lose my apartment. I've watched my friends get evicted from their own buildings because their landlords turned it into a shell apartment. That's happened to close friends of mine, it's happened to my coworkers. My coworkers are gouged every day by parking prices on the street. If you work a slow lunch shift and you don't do that well in tips and you get 2 tickets and because you can't move your car, what happened there? You know, I'm looking out for the little guy, and you're gonna hear a lot more of me, especially stand up for the homeless, and I wanna address that in the opioid crisis and confront it head on. My name's Travis Curran. I wanna end street harassment, integrate immigrant families, protect the working waterfront. I got more folks, you're gonna hear from me later. Thank you.
Do I hold it?
Yep, so actually, we'll start with you, Mr. Carden, for the next portion. These are the long form questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. And the same time indicators will be posted when you're close to the end of your time. First question, how would you describe your political philosophy? Are you affiliated with any political movements or parties?
I was raised a bleeding heart liberal by my mother. She was a school teacher, and then a hardcore blue collar working class from my father. He worked for Amtrak, he built the Downeaster. When it comes to my politics, I'm a humanist. I want to look out for everybody, not just the working class, but also the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class. The people that we don't really care about. I'm looking out for dishwashers, prep cooks, line cooks, Sous chefs, waiters, baristas, cashiers, the people that make our city run, the people who's going to serve the lobster rolls to Massachusetts when we all have to move to Westbrook. I'm not.
I would describe my political affiliation as a Democrat, but I think what's so important to me, and I don't love the labels, right? I think that we get mired in labels, and those are the things that divide us. For me, I look back to history, and I look at times where folks in Congress would disagree and debate on the floor and then get together for a picnic with their families at the end of the day, no matter whether they sat on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle. Working together in Portland is so important because we are one community. And whether you live on Peninsula or off Peninsula, whether you live in District 3 or District 5, we're each other's neighbors. And when I see policies and activism that seek to divide us, that worries me. Because at the end of the day, I know that on November 6th, I'm going to wake up and I'm still going to live on Kenwood Street. And I'm still going to have raised kids alongside so many folks in this community who are parents. And this is where I live and this is my home. So it's so important for me to be able to have positive, productive dialogue and debate and yet always keep the eye on the prize, which is what's the outcome we seek. If it's affordable housing, let's find a way to compromise and agree. I think that compromise is the gold standard of public policy making, which really requires folks to genuinely come to the table, share their perspectives, and work together to give a little and get a little so that everybody can walk away with their voice having been heard and part of the outcome.
He just avoided the gong. You can see him. He starts raising his hand. I'm a progressive Democrat, no doubt about it. I'm a fighter. I'm somebody who believes in making sure that your voice, the middle class, working class voices in City Hall, that we stand up to the moneyed interests, as I said before, that I believe, unfortunately, are gentrifying our city in a way that is squeezing out too many families. It's happening over and over again. As I talk to families, knocking on doors, as I do strimling on the street, sitting on a street corner somewhere, if I'm on community television, everybody is talking about how unaffordable the city is becoming. And my job as mayor is to be your voice, to try to stand up to that. Because I think that those interests have been running City Hall for too long. Right? This elected mayor issue is new. We didn't have an elected mayor for almost 100 years. It was taken away from us by the Ku Klux Klan. We finally got it back, and we got it back because people said we want a stronger voice in City Hall. And my job is to be your voice and to get results. And that's why for me, as I look back on my first term and recognize, as we talked about, rebuilding our elementary schools, providing property tax relief for seniors, building affordable housing, pushing up wages for workers, banning pesticides in the city of Portland, these are results that matter to everyday families in this city. And in the second term, we need to continue that work to build more affordable housing, to achieve universal pre-K, to really confront climate change around our public transportation system and converting to solar energy. My voice, my political affiliation is you.
Thank you for the question. This is a nonpartisan office. We do not run with labels, but I'm a proud Democrat. Someone who served in Janet Mills' transition team to help turn back the tide of the LePage administration policies that had done so much damage to our city. Someone who slept on a couch in New Hampshire to campaign for then President Obama. As somebody who went down to Washington to work with Shelley Pingree in Washington to pass affordable health care for the country, the Affordable Care Act. I am somebody who will be your voice at City Hall every day. But I also want to remind you that the policies that we debate at City Hall are not Democrat or Republican issues. My constituents, both Democrat and Republican, don't care what party I am, they care about the results. And as somebody who shows up, does site walks with people, holds ribbon cuttings for 20 feet of sidewalk, who addresses issues both big and small, that's the job, that's the mayor I intend to be. And I'll just say, the next mayor also needs to be able to multitask. And I will just say, I came here from a council committee meeting that I just chaired with two of my colleagues. And so what I think is important for the next mayor is to ensure that they understand the process. We are dog-tired, all of us who are in public service, but we continue to go because we want to serve you. That's our role here, regardless of our party. I would love to have your number one choice in November.
Discussion to start with Councilor Thibodeau. After much controversy, Riverside Street was chosen as a location for a new 150-plus bed homeless shelter. Do you think that this is the right move for the City of Portland? And how would you avoid replicating the problems in Bayside to another area of the city?
So that's a great question. Of course, I think the process that the City Council went through for 2.5 years, I'm one of 9 councilors. If you are in a family of 1 of 9, certainly there are going to be disagreements about the process on how you get to places. But ultimately, the decision that was before the council was 2 sites. And of those 2 sites, Riverside and Angelo's Acre, I certainly believe that Riverside was the right site. From my perspective, as far as a process goes, I've got experience with growth in my district. And I'll tell you that what I think the next mayor needs is experience bringing neighborhoods together. I've done that in the form of a neighborhood advisory committee to oversee the expansion of Maine Medical Center from the 5 neighborhoods that surround Maine Medical Center. These are the types of opportunities I think we have. And I will just say that there are neighborhood organizations like Libbytown who put on good work every single month in neighborhood committee meetings. But what needs to happen is the next mayor needs to be able to outreach to those neighborhood organizations. And I would say that I think that we've lost a lot of opportunities. There should have been, during that time, a discussion with neighborhood associations to distribute information, but also take feedback. This is a two-way street, a two-way conversation. I think the charrette that we did at USM was a good start. I wish we had done it earlier, but as far as the outcome, I look forward as next mayor, as somebody who cast my vote for Riverside, making sure that is successful, and I appreciate the question.
Thank you. This is a clear difference between Councilor Thibodeau and myself. Councilor Thibodeau did indeed vote the deciding vote to close the shelter downtown and to move it to the outskirts of town. I absolutely adamantly opposed that decision. I opposed it from the beginning. I had spoken out about it from the beginning. What we need to do is we need to now go back. We need to take that decision, bring it back up, reverse it, and get back to the table to come up with the right answer. And the right answer, from what I hear from people in the community and from social service providers and from the homeless community, is that we need to have small, scattered site shelters that can provide the kind of service that people need. One-on-one service, right? I ran a social service agency. What you need to do is to work with people where they're at, one-on-one. This decision to close the shelter downtown and to move it out is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the wrong folks running decisions at City Hall. So when my second term, I will go back and I will put before the council that decision. And I will ask the council to reverse that decision so that we can begin a real process to come up with the right answer that serves the homeless the best. That's the first most important question. And then make sure that we do it in ways that are integrated in our community, because remember, we already have scattered sites around the city and they work.
The decision to put a homeless shelter out on Riverside feels to me like a perfect example of what I've been watching for the last 4 years, which is decisions that make a community or people feel like they're either on the winning side or they're on the losing side. And this is no way to do public policy. It was a council decision. Initially, when the recommendation was made by staff to go out to Nason's Corner, the council was part of a big meeting at Breakwater School after real mobilization of a neighborhood organization, well done. And the council at that point pulled it back into committee. As I read the newspaper at my kitchen counter, what I thought was, thank goodness, now the council can implement a real process to solicit genuine feedback from a multitude of stakeholders. And I don't just mean city councilors, I mean neighbors, I mean content area experts in the realm of homelessness and social services. When I would ask around and say, how's that going? What are we learning? What I heard was, we're not really being asked to the table. And I wondered what was happening in committee. Eventually, we see something land on an agenda, and it's clearly not ready for council consumption. we have got to do better. We have got to be a city that pulls people in and asks them for their expertise and asks them to be part of the decision-making process. We'll never get the buy-in of communities if we don't do that and don't create partners out of them.
I feel incredibly strong about this. I have known the homeless population my entire career in Portland, from auto pizza, giving them the leftover pizza at the end of the night, to picking them up off the sidewalk, giving them my leftovers and my food, walking them to Oxford Street during a blizzard. I don't go to council meetings, I don't go to town association meetings, I go to the shelter. I went to the Preble Street Resource Center today, and I talked to them about how they felt. And none of them even know where Riverton is, guys. Like, the Riverside neighborhood, they should have consulted you all before they moved the shelter out there. Angela Acres is a perfect site for it. The homeless already hang out there. They know where that is, and it's close to the services they need. Not a single soul in the Preble Street Resource Center had an idea of how they're going to transport the homeless to and from the shelter, to the city, to downtown, where the services they need, where the jobs they want are. How are we going to help these people get up if we have to make them walk down Congress Street? My girlfriend, the love of my life, she lives in Riverton. Her daughter goes to Riverton School. We walk her to school. And don't get me wrong, I believe every homeless soul can be saved, but they're well aware as well as we are that there's riffraff and vagrants in town who come through. We don't want them walking up and down Congress Street in front of our McDonald's. Yeah, 20 seconds. Okay, cool. No, I'm very passionate about this. We absolutely have to bring the decision back to City Council. We need multiple shelters in multiple neighborhoods to ease the burden. Putting them out there is going to cause such a catastrophe. They know it, I know it, you all know it. Thank you.
The next question is, what would you do to help housing affordability in the city of Portland? Start at the end.
Thank you. First of all, incentives for developers to not build luxury condos would be pretty sweet. I agree. But I think we should tackle the issue head on in a way that's reasonable, that other cities have proved works. And I'm talking about curbing Airbnb, short-term rentals, in unhosted residences. I'm talking about shell apartments where they have investment properties, where landowners will take a whole apartment, evict my friends who work in city, and then shell it all out to Airbnb. We have got to stop it. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. We have to take it seriously. I'm for Airbnb home sharing. If it's your house, make it a little bed and breakfast on the internet. That's great. But stop buying Portland properties and then giving it away and running your own little private hotel without the same zoning, without the same fees, without the same kind of rules in effect. So I'm personally really pushing to stop Airbnb unhosted short-term rental sites. And I think that's the first step in the game. I think there's also all sorts of housing, funding, trust, bonds, stuff we can do in City Council. They know how to do it, we know how to do it, we're gonna work together to do it, people, we got this.
When I'm knocking on doors, people talk to me all the time about the housing crunch. Not only that we don't have enough affordable housing, but we also don't have enough low-income housing. The truth is, we don't have enough housing. And we've got to create more housing actively from City Hall. And the way that we do that is we start with short-term rentals. Portland is woefully behind in regulating and enforcing rules that have to do with taking apartments or spaces off the market for affordable housing and allowing them to be Airbnb. It's also transforming neighborhoods, and I think there's concern about that out there. So when we see our housing stock being either converted into high-end luxury condominiums that are out of the price reach for so many people, or being Airbnb, we have to say, well, what can we do? So as a city, we can work with a variety of community organizations and partner. We can work with the Community Housing Authority of Maine, Community Housing of Maine, the Maine State Housing Authority. We can seek state historic tax credits in areas of our city where we've got historic zoning. We have the opportunity to be active from City Hall and make partners. I also think that when we think about investments in affordable housing, and we talk about partnership with developers, we want to be careful not to vilify people. There are folks in our community who do good work to build housing.
Want to finish this up?
I'm a rule follower.
You all know about this remarkable moment we had in the city of Portland in June when about 100 families arrived here from the border. It was this incredible moment in which the city rose up, all of you rose up, surrounding communities rose up, and we had this moment where we showed the world that we can do something differently than the way the current administration is. That we're not going to put kids in cages, that we're not going to separate families, that we're actually going to embrace people and find places for them to integrate into the community. We have in the city of Portland room in our economy for these families. We are desperate for these families. We have in the city of Portland room in our schools for these families. We're desperate for these families. What we didn't have was housing. And to understand the level of that crisis, we needed for those families simply 100 apartments. And we would not have had to open the expo. 100. We have 17,000 apartments in the city of Portland, and we could not find 100 that were affordable for these families who wanted to live in this city. That is a tragedy and a crisis. And honestly, it is one of the issues that I have worked so hard to try to figure out how to get the council to do more and be more aggressive. It is a place where my opponent and I, again, we differ. I believe a $10 million housing bond to build housing. I believe we should regulate Airbnb. I believe that we should expand our property tax relief program to all families in the city of Portland. We should double the amount that developers have to build.
So I think Portland deserves better than what you just saw. And I think if that was a really nice introduction to a progressive Portland email, but that's not going to solve the housing crisis that we have. We've got to think regionally about how we address housing. This is not just a Portland issue. This is a regional issue. If you have neighboring communities who refuse to build housing, you have a recipe for disaster. I also think we need to take a couple of additional steps. I would not actually propose going back and looking at Airbnb. As the mayor said, we've got 17,000 rental units. We have now just capped the unoccupied, non-owner occupied units to 400. That is not the problem. The problem is we're not building fast enough. And so for me, my goal is a workforce housing initiative for the missing middle. The people who don't qualify for affordable housing vouchers, or GA, but are make between $30,000 and $70,000, ensuring that we separate 5 parcels of land to covenant with a public-private partnership to put housing on those sites. We have to get that started right away. We just did this with CHOM, an affordable housing project where we leased land on Middle Street to an affordable housing developer. We are now going to take 11 long-term stayers and move them into apartments in a couple of years. If we don't get started now, it's going to take us 2 years to get something built. We've got to start immediately. I will use that, the tools that are available to us in the Housing Committee to get this done.
The next question is, do you support Portland Public Schools' Portland Promise, the district's comprehensive plan? Please explain why you do or do not support it.
So yes. Obviously. So yes, I obviously support the Portland Promise. I will just say this is similar to Cure Personalis, which is care of the whole person, that I had the opportunity to go through at Shepherd's High School, which made me the person that I am today. It rewards and inspires the whole student, and that's something that we need to do. Since I've been on the council, we've increased school funding by $15 million. We've had some changes at the state level that will allow us to continue to address the budget woes that we face on an annual basis. Folks, when we are at 7-hour finance committee meetings or 7-hour city council meetings debating over $1 million, we know the system is broken. And it is broken because it rewards a race to the bottom. Reiki, my school that I represent currently, had ramps that were falling down, had one glass door that stood between the outside world and 300 students. had kids learning in locker rooms and cloak closets. We cannot have this in our school. As somebody who went, and the only person on this stage who went through a Portland public school, I will say that it is a disaster. It was a disaster, and the work that we did as a council, not just I or me, but we, will make the next generation, I think, better, and their school education choices better for our city and create the equity that was just talked about.
I'll answer that. I do just want to address on the housing issue. There is no doubt that Airbnb is a problem. 400 units being taken off the market is a big deal, without question. And I want to build the housing. That's why we need a $10 million housing bond. That will allow us to build 1,000 units of housing in this city. This is the most important issue. And it's so important that my colleagues on the council start to hear that and step up and start to support it in the ways that we can really make a difference. We can't just talk about all this regional stuff. Of course we would like Westbrook to build more housing, but we have to do it here. When immigrants came here 10 years ago, we didn't have to put them in the expo because we could move them into housing, because we had it. And as my colleague here said, we have to build more to put them there. Now let me talk about the Portland Promise real quick. Look, the last 2 years, we have had the largest investments in our schools that we have had in decades. Those are part of the results that I am very proud of as a member of the Finance Committee and as the mayor of the city, how hard we had to work. And make no mistake, that was very difficult. There was a tremendous pushback by the council and by some to not pass those kind of increases. In fact, in 1 year, $1 million was actually cut from the increase that the schools needed. And what did that mean? 2 fewer days of school for our kids, less classes for them in middle school, and larger class sizes for kindergartners. That is not a way to make sure that we take care of our low-income kids, our English language learners, our minority students, and all of the rest.
To answer the question, yes, I'm a big fan of the Portland Promise. The 4 goals articulated are achievement, whole student, equity, and people. It's the district's strategic plan. It's a good plan, and it's worth investment every year as we can. I've had 3 kids go through Portland Public Schools. My husband and I chose to stay in Portland largely because of the schools. I will tell you that, is it on? Okay. My experience in Portland with schools from the time our kids entered in 2002 up through now, I work as the executive director for the Foundation for Portland Public Schools, has been an absolute commitment on my part and my family's part. Being able to invest in Portland schools in a variety of ways is really a community effort, and I want to talk about this for a minute. Every year there's a struggle. I went through 6 of them very intimately. I know those midnight meetings where you're struggling over those cuts that your heart is wrenched over. Here's the thing, as Portland's valuation goes up, our subsidy from the state goes down, and until the funding formula becomes more favorable to Portland and other property-rich towns, we have a conundrum, which is that as a community we're paying for education, which means we have got to diversify revenues for the city of Portland. We've got to start charging restaurant and hotel taxes, we've got to get a local option sales tax, and we have to recognize that education funding falls largely on Portland at the moment when we have not yet diversified revenues.
I also support the Portland Promise. It's a great idea. Education should absolutely come first. I understand there was a large controversy with the 4 schools. The fact there was a controversy in City Hall to save 4 schools is embarrassing to City Council. I can't believe that was a debate. It was just gross. No, I grew up in a public school in Oxford Hills in Waterford, Maine. It was a large community. My mother teaches English as a second language in Lewiston, Auburn. Integrating our immigrant communities into our public school system is incredibly important, especially with ESL programs, to create a stronger, more integrated workforce as our children grow and come up. But oh my God, guys. I want to watch 2 city councilors slug it out over here about issues that have already been passed. We should really focus on the issues of the future. I mean, honestly. The Portland education, incredibly important, but can we please focus on keeping Portland safe, affordable for everyone to live in?
Next question. Portland's charter was amended several years ago to create the mayor position. How do you think this change is working for the city?
It's going cool, guys. No, I've seen Ethan out doing his talk to the mayor stuff, and that's honestly a good idea. The mayor should be the voice of the people. Unfortunately, when you get into politics, you get into money, and alternative corporate interests start taking hold. I promise, as your next mayor, no one's going to be able to buy me. I'm a working class stiff. I'm the poorest one up here. I can't even tell you how many quarters I put into my girlfriend's car's meter just to buy the shirt to look nice for you all today. No, I walk up and down Congress Street twice a day to my job. I'm a pedestrian. I talk to everyone on the street. I go into stores. I listen to you. I'm one of you. And I promise to be your voice in city council. But I don't want any more city council 5-4 votes. That's ridiculous. And I will remind city councilors what their constituents actually believe in and who elected them to the position. And the city planner has too much power, guys. Who's with me? Come on. Yeah. When I get up there, thank you. I know it's a hotbed issue, but I'm not afraid, all right? I haven't met the man myself. I promise I'm going to be his best friend. And we can revise the charter to make it a more electable position so he can actually represent the city of Portland interests and not a basketball team's later.
One of the most frequent comments that I get when I'm knocking on doors is, why do we have a mayor? We don't need a mayor. I think a lot of folks out there are wondering about this position. There's a lot of controversy about it. And the truth is that starting 4 years ago, I would open up the newspaper in the morning and I would wonder what's happening. It doesn't seem like what was envisioned by the Charter Commission is what's happening. I was chairing the school board when the Charter Commission was seated and was doing its work, and I want to remind folks that the thinking at the time was, we just had the Main State Pier indecision, we had the Nathan Clifford closure, we were on the heels of some long-term decision-making in the city of Portland that either didn't get decided or left people feeling unsettled. And so conversations around that commission table were, how can we have somebody who serves for 4 years and works full-time for the city of Portland and straddles both councilor terms who are coming on and off the council and helps straddle issues that take longer than 12 months to manage, because in our previous model, it was a 12-month model, elected among their peers. And so those were some of the rationale for creating this position. It is a policy position. The power comes from working with colleagues on the council to identify priorities, agree to them, and then get to work. It is not an activist position. It's an opportunity for somebody to work full-time, to support the work of committees so that the recommendations coming out of those committees are ready.
It is an activist position when it needs to be. And when it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be. And that's important to understand, right? There is not simply one way to make sure that you get results. Because what matters is that you get results. Let's talk about the 4-school bond, because this is probably the most important example of how having a mayor has made a difference for all of us. The 4-school bond was talked about in this city for a generation, 20 years. Stuck in the school board, council not doing anything, back and forth, not able to find a way to move it forward. Not until we had an elected mayor who put this issue on his shoulders with the people of this city and said, you know what, we are going to get this through. And let me tell you, when it first came from the school board, I think maybe there were 2 votes on the council for it. Maybe 3. And in the end, after the work, and it was hard because change is tough, and when you're trying to overcome the kind of resistance that existed, we passed it 8-1. So remember, in the end, it was just about unanimous. Property tax relief. We could have passed property tax relief in the city over a decade ago. The state allowed us, authorized us to provide property tax relief for our lowest income residents, and for a decade we did nothing. Banning pesticides, we did nothing until South Portland finally did something. That's the effect of having your voice in City Hall.
I think the question was, how do you think it's going? And I think, I don't think it's going well, to be honest. I think we've left a lot to be desired, and let me tell you why. Because of what was just said about throwing this on my back, and it's not an I or a me, it is a us and a we. We act as one body. The decisions that the council makes is the decision of the council body. So I want to be very clear about that. Point 2, if you are in any sort of employment or in any sort of organization, you must understand that if you don't have the trust of your colleagues, the trust of your boss, or the trust of your employees, you have no basis for success. I have that trust. I work with the city manager, I work with my colleagues on the council, and by the way, even when I disagree with them on a Monday night, on Tuesday and Wednesday night at committee, I'm back in there working with them to get things done for the city of Portland. That's the difference, that's where it's failed, and if I'm elected for the first time in 7 years, you have the opportunity to elect somebody with council experience. I'm that person. Thank you.
Next question. How would you balance the drive for gentrification and new development while protecting those who already live here?
Yeah, I mean, this is the issue, other than housing, is how we grow sustainably without leaving folks behind. This is the conversation that we've had at the council for the last 4 years, and I suspect we'll have it until we have some sort of a correction. And so the way that I balance that on a daily basis is that I make sure that I keep my head to the ground. I'm on 3 committees, which is unusual, and I thank the mayor for putting me on 3 committees. I'm on housing, I'm on economic development, and I'm the chair of the Sustainability and Transportation Committee. And all of those issues affect one another. Without economic opportunity and the office that we created to ensure that that is a possibility for others, you don't have housing, you don't have economic growth, you don't have strong schools. You need to ensure that all of those things are working. When we got on the council, they weren't. But we've taken systematic steps to do that. As your next mayor, as part of my workforce development plan, is ensuring that at the time where we have 2% unemployment, that we have a place to put workers, right? I think the council must take up an ordinance to address cooperative living housing. I think we've got to pilot that. I think we must set aside land for our workforce. I've talked to a woman who said that the only thing that she wants is for her son to come home to the city, but he can't find a place to live. That is a problem, and that is the goal.
Yeah, this is the issue I spoke about when we started. The over-gentrification, the overdevelopment of our city that is squeezing out our families. We are just seeing these $1 million condos and multi-million-dollar hotels going up everywhere. And you just hear it from folks, not just on the peninsula, of course, all across the district. People feeling like they just can't afford to live and that we are losing some of our character in this city. That if this keeps happening, we are going to become a city of the uber wealthy and those who are looking for services. That's why, as your mayor, I am going to continue to be your voice to achieve what it is that we need to achieve to balance that. And part of what we have to do is we have to say to developers, you have to do it differently. You have to double the amount of affordable housing you're actually building. Another place where my colleague and I disagree. Right now, they only have to build 10% of their units as affordable when they're building $1 million condos. That should be 20%. We have to make sure that we're saying to develop the Airbnb industry, I'm sorry, if you don't live in the unit, you don't get to rent it out. That's how you begin to push back on the over-gentrification of our city, because this wave is washing people out to sea. We have to step in and say to developers, I'm sorry, you know what? If you're going to build on our public property that we own, build what we need, not what you need.
As your next mayor, I will understand what it is to choose to live in Portland, to raise a family in Portland, to buy a house in Portland, and to pay taxes in Portland. Portland is a residential city, and that's part of the magic of Portland. You can live here, you can work here, and you can send your kids to school here. There's a difference between Portland and some of the bedroom communities, right? You can do it all here. Hopefully you can walk to work and bike to work if you want to. Hopefully parking's not too bad and things aren't too much of a headache. But part of the magic of Portland is that we are a residential city. And what that means is that we have all sorts of people who live here. I want to make sure that as a healthy and thriving city, we have young families who have the opportunity to buy a house in the city of Portland and send their kids to school here. I don't want to see young families moving out when their kids get to be kindergarten age because Portland's not the city for them anymore and the taxes are too high and they can pay less in taxes in one of the neighboring communities. By keeping our eye on taxes, we keep the middle class here. We keep families here who are currently here and we attract families who would not otherwise come. So I think taxes are a major lever that we need to be consistently talking about. And the consideration of taxpayers during the council's budget process each year is something that I worry about. I'm not sure whether or not there's enough of a pulse in terms of people's aspirations and the capacity that the community has.
I live in my apartment on Munjoy Hill for the last 10 years. My rent's gone up once. My people don't believe me when I tell them I have a very personal relationship with my landlord. I think she's an idiot. But Portland's about to go through a revaluation and it's about to become a really big deal. She's not an idiot. She's really, really nice. And she's letting me and a couple families really be able to thrive and survive on the hill. But I'm watching through my bedroom window houses get demolished and McMansions go up. I'm watching the condos show up. I'm watching the price of coffee on the corner store go up. And I think we can absolutely do a lot of things to help prevent gentrification from absolutely strangling us and squeezing out not just the missing middle, but like the lower middle and the upper lower and the lower class. The working class, the people that run our factories, the people that serve us coffee, that bust your dishes, hi, me. And I think housing, also very important. We absolutely have to kick out Airbnb. No, it has to be home sharing, and that's my bottom line on that. It has to be that way because we're in the middle of a crisis, but it's strictly tied to transportation. The Metro is doing great things, and I'm really proud of them, but we can help the Metro. We need to reboot our bus lines for commuters that off the peninsula. I'd love to see a light electric rail system to really aid transportation, and also we take the burden of traffic off downtown. I want card systems, it's gonna gong me. I want card systems to pay bus fares, and I want I want to address the opioid epidemic. I keep holding it.
What can be done to reduce property tax burdens?
I'd like to pursue a local option sales tax. I think it's a really good idea. I want the tourists, they're going to come, guys. My restaurant, Empire Chinese Kitchen, was just rated overall best restaurant by some magazine. I don't care. It's not important. The restaurant industry's drawing people here no matter what. They're coming, they're not going to stop. We're more and more popular every year and we know it. It's ridiculous to even pretend otherwise. We need a local option sales tax on hotel rooms, on other amenities that they're going to pay for to pay back into the community, to take the burden of taxes off us. And that's all I got on that.
What can be done to reduce property tax burdens?
Expand and diversify revenue sources. As I mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Foundation for Portland Public Schools, and this is an initiative that came on the heels of a community task force. So this is one of those reports that didn't get shelved, and I'm so proud of that. There was a community group chaired by a past counselor who made recommendations for expanding and diversifying revenue sources to support public education in the city of Portland. I was asked to come in and put together a steering committee to take that idea and make it a reality. The reality there is that we have a vision, and the vision is that public school in Portland, just like Bowdoin, just like Waynflete, just like Thornton Academy, can be improved through philanthropy. And so we're looking to bring in new money to support public schools. This money will never supplant teacher salaries or benefits. It will never fund the things that are essential programs and services. But what it can do is what it does at other institutions that understand the role philanthropy can play. It can provide enrichment. It can offer professional development. It can let you start a pilot program. And by engaging the big businesses and foundations and individuals who have the capacity to give, what we've done is we've diversified the revenue coming in to support Portland Public Schools. I also sit on the Parks Conservancy Board. We have the same mission, to generate philanthropy for our parks. This is a small start. Portland has an opportunity to do much more in terms of revenue diversification.
I definitely agree with Kate on a few things. I love the work she did with the Portland Education Foundation, incredibly helpful for our schools. We have to find ways to bring more partners in, to be able to do work, to diversify our revenue, to be able to put those enhancements in place that make our schools even stronger. Local option sales tax, key. I will say we got closer than we have ever gotten. This last year, the Mayor's Coalition made it their top priority. We brought mayors from all over the state up to City Hall, up to Augusta. We got it through the House. Mike Sylvester was the sponsor up on Munjoy Hill. As close as we've ever gotten, and hopefully next time we'll be able to get that across the finish line. But the most important thing we can be doing to provide property tax relief is to make sure that that property tax relief goes to those people who need it. Middle class, working class families. That's why the property tax relief program that we put in place, which goes to seniors, needs to be expanded to all ages, and it needs to be broadened in terms of its income, because that's a way that we can take the burden, shift the burden to those who are in the $1 million condos and the multi-million-dollar hotels that are being built, and provide the relief to you. I honestly don't feel like we need to provide property tax relief to the multi-million-dollar hotels downtown. I think you need property tax relief. And that's why just simply trimming the rate gives them more of a break than it gives you. That's why if we take it and put it in the program, it goes directly in your pocket.
So I think two things. What you will never hear from me, I think we need to speak clearly about this, is that I'm just going to increase your property tax by a cup of coffee a month. That's not true. It's a disingenuous statement. Philanthropy, I think, is a good step, but it's not going to get us there, especially when we talk about $1 million representing a 1% tax increase on your property taxes. The second thing, the local option sales tax has been introduced for 40 years. And we are still talking about that. That is 20 years past when you first ran for office, Mayor, and I was at Nathan Clifford, just for the record.
I was in those battles for 6 years.
But I'll say, no matter how close we get, we need to be real with you about what we're going to come and ask you for. We know that the cost of construction are going up. That means an impact on your tax rate. I have a deal with my constituents. I tell them I have a 24-hour rule, because if I cannot show up at the end of my term and tell you and show you something tangible that your dollars have gone towards, then why would you allow me to keep raising your taxes every single month? I'm here for the big issues and the small issues. By the way, the great equalizer is coming, and that is the property revaluation. And it's going to kill us. It's going to hurt seniors especially seniors on Munjoy Hill. We need an honest broker in this role. I will be that honest broker if you give me the opportunity. I've done that for the last 4 years, and I hope to be your next mayor.
For Councilor Thibodeau, the city recently implemented the Portland Senior Tax Equity, or PSTEP program. What do you think of this program, and do you have other ideas to help seniors in the city?
So yes, absolutely. I think this was a great proposal. I did support it at the committee level. I was in the hospital when it was voted on in November due to an appendix issue. I am back. I am healthy. I am grateful for the health care that I have, but we need to ensure that those who don't have it get health care. I will say what I will do to help seniors is what they ask. And a lot of folks in neighborhoods, when I'm knocking on their door, they're asking for that additional dwelling unit so that they can stay in their homes and they can pay the property taxes. Folks ask us all the time, they say, I just want to stay in my house every single year. You're killing me. You're killing me. I live on a fixed income. And so we've got limited options. Sure, we can expand P-step. But for some, that's not going to be enough, especially with a revaluation that will cause their property taxes to go potentially 3-4-fold. That is something that is on the horizon for folks. We've got to address that. I will say we do have programs for seniors or for folks who cannot stay in their homes. That is the abatement process. It's a lengthy process, but one that we use when seniors cannot pay their property tax bills. I will be an honest broker throughout this process. That's why I'm running for mayor.
Did we all have the same question?
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I love the P-STEP program. I was glad to work on this, brought it forward to the council. As I mentioned before, this was an issue that the council could have passed 10 years ago. I think it's a direct reflection of having a mayor and being able to hear from you as to what it is you need to do. And the only issue I'll disagree with is P-STEP is significant. Right? You can get up to $900 in property tax relief. That needs to be expanded at the council level to $1,200, which is what the state now does. And we need to increase the income. That's real money. You can get $1,000 from the state, $1,200 from the state, $1,200 from us. That's $2,400 in property tax relief. That is real money. That is money that keeps people in their homes if property taxes is the issue that's keeping them out. So the P-STEP program is something very close to my heart, very proud to have authored it and brought it forward and got it through the council unanimously. And I think this is an example where I want to talk about, I didn't have to be an activist in that case, right? In this one, it was quiet. We worked, we got it done, there was good support, we did it in committee, brought it forward, and it was unanimous. That's what's important about understanding with a mayor. Sometimes you got to be quiet and lead from behind. Sometimes you got to be an activist and lead out front. But in the end, you better get things done. You better help people stay in their homes. Because if you don't, then you ought to be thrown out of office. No doubt about it. If I don't get things done for you, I shouldn't go back.
Addressing senior needs is an important job of city government in Portland. And so giving tax relief to seniors is the right thing to do. I would never question that. In fact, we ought to do more. And with the revaluation coming our way and the results being known not too long from now, I think one thing that we've learned from other communities, both in Maine and around the country, is that oftentimes those hardest hit are the elderly. And so the city needs to be ready with a plan. Because when there are folks who come forward and say, I'm on a fixed income, my housing has been revalued and therefore my property tax bill is going up significantly, which means I may not be able to stay in my home, we need to have a response for that because that's a special category. So I feel really strongly that we are meeting the needs of seniors in our community, just like we're meeting the needs of young families. Look, Portland's vitality comes from the fact that there's all sorts of folks who live here and are living different kinds of lives. I know that in Portland Public Schools, we've got the grandparents program, the volunteer grandparents program. That lights up a kid's day when a grandparent walks in and is reading to the classroom. If we lose those folks in the city of Portland, we've lost an asset. Every year when the school budget is being debated, there are folks who come forward and say, we're part of the 80% of Portland who don't have kids in school. Some of those folks are elderly or seniors, and their concern is that they're on a fixed budget. We have to listen to them, and we have to include them in the discussion about how to appropriately generate funding for schools and pass a budget at the city level.
To answer the question, yes, of course, I think the program's great. Yes, of course, I believe we need to provide tax relief for the seniors. It wasn't until the Back Cove Neighborhood Association I learned we didn't even have a senior center, to which I said we should build one. And I was a little surprised the city council hasn't even done that yet. Like, what gives? Build a senior center. And we should also provide better transportation to it. Bus passes for seniors. We should improve the infrastructure of our sidewalks. I don't know if you guys live in residential neighborhoods like me, but getting over the snowbanks in the wintertime gets a little tough, even for little young scrappers like me. I'm 33 years old. I'm not young. But no, we need to help the seniors get over these snowbanks.
We need to get them involved in the community. I had to put my grandmother in a home this last summer up in Lewiston, and it was heartbreaking for my entire family. The seniors should be able to stay at home. So we should rezone Portland to allow more multifamily units to allow our seniors to even live with the families. I'm getting blunt. All right. As your next mayor, I promise to listen to all of you, no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are, and I'm going to do my best in city council to represent you. All right?
Thank you very much, candidates. This concludes the long-form question portion, and this is what we're calling the lightning round. In front of you are cards with red and green sides. You'll be asked a series of yes or no questions, and please hold up the card with the green side facing out to indicate a yes answer, and the red side facing out to indicate a no answer. Please hold them high and hold them up for a couple of seconds so everybody can see. First question. Sorry. Hold. Would you vote to fund construction of the 150-bed homeless shelter in Riverside as it is currently planned?
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. Would you vote to fund construction of the 150-bed homeless shelter in Riverside as it is currently planned? Do you favor using city-owned land to develop affordable housing? Would you support charter reform to eliminate the city manager position and install an executive mayor? Do you support ranked choice voting for city elections?
Yes.
Do you support public clean election funding for municipal elections? Do you favor needle exchanges?
Yeah.
Do you support safe injection spaces? Do you support local option taxes? Do you support any form of rent stabilization?
Rent? Did you say rent stabilization?
You mean like rent control?
Stabilization.
Do you support municipal funding for universal pre-K?
Yes.
Do you support the return of large item pickup? Do you support non-citizen voting in municipal elections?
Yes.
Should city funds be used to increase mainland parking availability for island residents? Thank you very much.
So next up is a trivia round. And one thing we learned from the last trivia round is that you raise your hand to say that you have the answer. People in the audience are in a spot who raise their hand first, but then wait for the microphone to get to you before you read your answer so that we can get it on the audio. Okay? And Steph is going to join us for
Put it in the middle.
the questions.
Do we have to keep our hands on the table when we start? Is it like
I guess.
first hand up or
Where's the buzzer?
under the table?
What is the financial year 2020 mill rate in the city of Portland?
22. I'm sorry. 2260 ballpark. 22.
No.
What was it?
It's a 21.8.
No, it is 2331.
Sorry, that's the new increase. It was 2260 last year. Fair enough. Fair enough.
How much does a single purple trash bag cost? Either 15-gallon or 30-gallon?
$1.50.
That's correct.
Okay, yes.
What is the current parking meter rate?
Oh, Travis.
It's a quarter for 9 minutes and it's a travesty and a crime.
The answer is $1.75 an hour.
That's right.
What does a yellow parking ban mean?
Peninsula guys know.
It just means it's yellow zone parking ban. You can't park in the yellow zone parking where that little yellow emblem is.
And where is it normally?
Oh, on the peninsula. Oh, so.
What?
You didn't say where is it.
Okay. What Portland politician was once described as the senator from Hansonville by Stephen Colbert?
I want to say Spencer Thibodeau. But I'm going to go with the string. Begrudgingly go with the string. I will give you that vote.
Someday.
On which days of the week can you go to the Portland Farmers Market? Spencer.
Wednesday and Saturday.
That's correct. Name a train line that goes through Portland.
The Amtrak down Easter that my father built.
And now, can you?
It's the line.
It's the train line.
Oh.
The name of the line?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
The Montreal line.
Nope. Some answers are St. Lawrence, Atlantic, also known as Grand Trunk, Pan Am, also known as Main Line, and Mountain Division.
Fair enough.
And can any of you name 3 businesses in Riverton?
3 businesses in Riverton? Sure. We all probably can.
3 businesses in Riverton.
So Allagash, Lucas Tree, and Hannaford. Is that it?
Moran's Market, come on.
Noble Barbecue.
Noble Bar, there you go.
Orange Market.
Yeah.
Riverton.
All right, so we're now at closing statements. There's 3 minutes each, so we can see in 20-second warning. And are we starting? I remember where we stopped.
I started.
We had the last question.
Oh wait.
I answered last.
Okay, so we'll start with you then for closing statements.
Closing statements? Someone else can start.
You can see. Come back.
I might start. I'm Travis Curran. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for coming. And thank you all for coming out. It's been a real pleasure to see you all and speak with you. If you don't know me that well, you can find me in Empire Chinese Kitchen. If I'm in the apron, please don't bother me. Unless you want dumplings, in which case I'll sell them to you. But no, I'm running for office because I'm trying to represent the working class here in Portland, and I'm going to be a fresh face in city council. And I'm going to build relationships. I'm going to stand up for about each and every one of you. It doesn't matter how old or young or rich or poor, left or right. I'm a humanist. And we did not address the opioid crisis except for the lightning round. But I would like to absolutely address that. It directly ties into the homelessness issue. We're at an epidemic nationwide. Portland remains famous right now because of our overdoses. And the Overdose Prevention Society is a fantastic organization I'm going to work closely with to establish overdose prevention sites and work on harm reduction in the community. That you will absolutely, if you join me with this, see an increase in the homeless population's good behavior. They know as well as we do that in order to get integrated, we all need help, and we have to reach out and help every Portlander that's out there, no matter who they are or where they sleep. I also believe in public transportation. We need night buses for our second and third shift workers. I also believe property tax relief. The money can be found, people, and through local option sales tax, we can absolutely provide relief. And we can make the tourists pay us that live here. I want Portland to be affordable for everyone that lives here to also work here. I don't have the experience of my colleagues, but if I don't know how to do something, I know someone who does. I guarantee I'm a fast learner. And I'm going to listen to you. I'm easily accessible. I walk up and down the street every day, and I'm going to do my absolute darndest to honestly represent you all in City Hall. And vote any way you want, but in this November, it's ranked choice. You get to pick 4 names, and I want to be one of your favorites. My name's Travis Curran. I'm running for mayor. I didn't get a table, but I got these. Meet me. I'll give them to you. And I love you all. Bye.
Thank you all so much. much for being here this evening. I want to say a special thank you to the Libbytown Neighborhood Association as well as Nason's Corner. I know that Stroudwater, Oakdale Woodfords, and the University Neighborhood Associations as well as Deering Center were on the roster. So thank you so much. This is actually an amazing thing, I have to say, just from the candidate's perspective, to have several neighborhood organizations coming together and giving us an opportunity to interact with a whole lot of folks is fantastic. It's efficient, and I love it. Thank you to everybody for being here this evening. I know that lives are busy, and so taking time to engage civically, as you are, is important and valuable, and I appreciate it. My name is Kate Snyder. I'm running for mayor, and I'm asking for your first place vote on November 5th. I want you to feel good about Portland City government. I want you to feel like you are being represented at the council table and that the councilors are working together to establish annual priorities, as stated in the charter. It's part of the deal. That the mayor is convening a group of folks at the beginning of the year to talk about priorities, and that those priorities really drive the council's work. I served 6 years as an elected official here in Portland. As I mentioned before, I had the opportunity to spend 4 of those years in leadership positions. And I believe, it was said earlier, and I believe in this truly, to develop the camaraderie and the trust among your colleagues is imperative to getting the work done. You can disagree, you can debate, you can end up with split votes, that's fine. But I believe so strongly that our conduct as we go into this work is a representation of you all. And I want you to feel confident that your representatives in city government are doing the work that will propel our city forward. Portland is on the move, there's no doubt about it. And part of the discomfort is the change when we go from what we have been through what we are now to what we will be. And those change points require somebody who has experience, temperament, and stability to help lead the way through tough decisions. We've got, the homeless shelter is still clearly on the radar. We've got housing issues that we're all talking about this evening. Lots of folks in Portland feel like their taxes are too high. We obviously need to diversify revenues and work really well with our partners in our legislative delegation, and work really well both regionally and at the state level to get the local option sales tax once and for all completed. As I mentioned earlier, I want our city government not to create winners and losers, but to be thoughtful about how we conduct process in a way that brings people to the table, listens genuinely to voices, and makes good decisions for the city of Portland. Again, thank you very much.
I want you to feel like your government is getting results for you. Results that matter to your lives. Change is hard. I'm not going to pretend there haven't been bumps. I'm not going to pretend that I haven't had to throw some elbows and sometimes had to fight harder than I would have liked. But I'm not going to apologize for that. Because every minute I was there, I was fighting for what I believed the people of this city wanted me to accomplish on your behalf. Every minute. I've been doing this work for a long time. It's not my first time to the rodeo fighting for people who are marginalized, for people who are left out, being squeezed. I've been doing that work for a long time. And sometimes you gotta ruffle feathers. Sometimes you don't, but sometimes you do. And big change is hard. But that is what this moment needs. Because we all feel it. We're losing a little bit of our city. We all want our kids to have the best education in the state of Maine. The best. And that means we gotta fight for it. We all want affordable places to live. And that means we gotta fight for it. We all want workers to get paid better wages. You all want to get paid better wages. That means we gotta fight for it. Change is hard. Look, it's been tough in my first term. There are some days I get up in the morning and I'm like, what? How can this be so hard? As Travis said earlier, how can it be so hard to decide to rebuild 4 elementary schools? How can it be so hard to try to pass a $10 million housing bond? How can it be so hard? I ask myself that. But I recognize that every day, I gotta get up and just keep going. Because your lives are hard. Because you're struggling to try to survive in this economy. Love me or hate me, I'm gonna be doing that for you every minute I'm in City Hall. Every single minute. And on November 5th, I would love your vote. Thank you very much for a great forum.
So, Brett, I noticed that you didn't read out the score of who won the trivia, so I gotta expect that maybe it was me. Thank you very much, in all seriousness, to you for hosting an amazing forum. Thank you to Libbytown. Thank you to all of those organizations who came forward to put this together. My name is Spencer Thibodeau, and I'm running to be the next mayor of our hometown. You know, as I was listening to the other candidates talk about why they are running, I really enjoyed getting to learn about each one of them in a different way that I maybe didn't know that, including you, Mayor. They all paint great pictures of what they hope the city will be. And as the current mayor was speaking, I was thinking to myself about the activist and collaborator that he was describing, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, I really wish over the last 4 years that was the person who I saw in that role. And that wasn't the case. And what this moment calls for is a fresh energy and a fresh perspective and somebody who can collaborate. Now, I want to tell you a story about one of my first city council meetings. Councilor Duson was sitting across the dais from me, and I thought that we needed to debate. And so I got in a debate with her. And after the meeting, I was thinking, oh man, I think I won that one. And I was leaving, and Councilor Brenneman pulled me aside and he said, Spencer, how do you think that went? And I was about to answer, well, I thought it went well. He said, it didn't go well. You need to reach out to Councilor Duson. You need to talk with her. And I did. And what I learned from that was, it's not about winning that battle. It's about ensuring that the relationships and the trust you have with the people that you work with on a daily basis is maintained, even through the ups and the downs. Now, as somebody who's on the council now, whether I win this race or not, I will be working with the next mayor. And if that's the mayor, I will be working with the mayor. And that's something I'm committed to doing because my constituents expect it. We need real change in this position. We need real experience in this position. Somebody who's actually done what they said they'd do. And that is work with the city manager and work with the members of the city council. I will do that regardless of who is in this mayor's position. I ask for your first place vote in November. And I thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Next forum, thank you so much to all of the councilors of the City Council of D3 and mayoral candidates. If you want to donate to our neighborhood association, that helps us put on events like this. Thank you very much.
Gonna take that act on the road.
Oh yeah.